It's the time of year that the eyes of the world are focused on the World Center of Racing. January brings the attention to the Daytona International Speedway, and as the iRacing special events get underway, it's time to roar before the 24. Welcome along to RaceSpot TV, to the iRacing Esports Network, for what is bound to be an exciting 2 hours and 40 odd minutes of excitement. Our Junior Kenki party on hand alongside with Paul Smith as we get underway. And Paul, this is one of my favorite special events of the year, and this year we add some new cars and classes into the mix.
We certainly do. I have to say I will miss the GR86 from competing in this event, but yes, we've got the LMP3s, GT4s and TCRs for you here today. I would have been competing in this race, well, not the split anyway, if I wasn't commentating on it, but well, where's the next best place to go than right here in the commentary box?
It's a nice place to be shouting about fake race cars, that is for sure. Let's talk about the 2024 iRacing special events, a journey that will take us across the full year, but more importantly maybe, across of different disciplines of motorsports. Yes, of course, most of the attention is going to be placed on Daytona, the 24 coming up in a week's time, the 500 a couple of weeks after that. But realistically, Paul, no matter what type of motorsports you enjoy, there's something for everyone in this calendar.
Absolutely, and this is the great thing about the iRacing special events calendar is you've got endurance racing, you've got your NASCAR events, you've got charity events as well, which the MS charity events have been really popular. We've got the Martinsville MX500, which I'm really looking forward to actually. I think that's going to be a blast. And of course, you've got a bit of Crandon, you've got the Chili Bowl, you've got everything.
Let's not mess around by saying the news this past week that the iRacing Indy 500 is back, I think will cause a lot of joy around the world as well. 13 years of history going to be added on as we make our way towards the month of May once again. Let's talk about today, the iRacing Roar. In the real world, the Roar is a test for the 24. The teams, the drivers get a chance to go to Daytona, break out their cars, shake down their cars. This is slightly different though. This mirrors the cars that we see in the IMSA VP Sports Car Challenge as well as in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. It's LMP3, GT4 and touring cars for 144 minutes of racing, and you look at the BOP adjustments, and Paul, I just recognize how exciting it is to have choices in touring car and GT4 aplenty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That balance performs. I think you still will see people favouring certain cars, purely because of them knowing those cars more intimately than others. But still, it's great to have that choice, to have that balance performance adjustment for this event is excellent, and it just gives people that option.
And when it comes to those adjustments as well, it means that the drivers may have preferences. You now have to build your car setup, your choice of car around what the iRacing team have done. The LMP3 Ligier, hopefully not too many dentists out in force in this top split today, but I think, Paul, that's going to be interesting. Like you say, maybe a bit of a shame that we aren't going to see the GR86s, which always put on an exciting show, as did the MX5s in years past as well. But the prototypes are going to bring a different flair into the mix here today.
Oh, they certainly are, and it really just will increase the pace. Those LMP3s are a fantastic machine around this venue. They mix well with the GT4s. I think they'll do well with the TCRs as well, just having that enough of a gap in pace that it's people aren't getting stuck behind people on straights.
If you're wondering what the weather conditions are, well, as we look from up above, 19 degrees in the air. That's rather typical of Daytona in January, but because we're racing in the afternoon, 27 degrees Celsius in terms of the track temperature. Not much wind to speak of either as the drivers unload for the 8-minute qualifying session. The drivers get the track to themselves and the opportunity to really unleash themselves for 2 flying laps. Already starting to see LMP3 time start to come onto the board, waiting for the GT4s, for the touring cars as well. I think what would be a lot of fun for us to do though, potentially, Paul, would be to jump around with one of these cars for a full lap around in qualifying. And I think because you're a touring car specialist, let's jump on board with Aaron Vasquez and begin the lap here at the World Center of Racing.
So you're already going to be absolutely flat out, bouncing off the limiter by the time you get to the end of this straight. Pick your braking zone. It's a tricky braking zone into turn 1 because you're turning all the time. Get it into the apex then and onto the power straight away. Through 2 and in towards the International Horseshoe. get onto the brakes once again. This is a rather slow corner. Want to get that back end just rotating going into the corner with this touring car to help just get around that corner. Onto the power again through this kink. It's pretty much flat out even in a touring car through this left-hander. Keep the car over to the left, onto the brakes for the Western Horseshoe. Again, one of the slowest points of this track. Onto the power again. With these front-wheel drive cars, you're always scrubbing the fronts on the power out of corners, over to the right-hand side, onto the brakes, and then through the left-hander, onto the oval. We're going to hit NASCAR's turns 1 and 2, and this is just flat out for this TCR now. You're going to be absolutely Harry Flatters, as Sterling Moss used to say, all the way along here towards the Le Mans chicane. Just keeping it pinned. You can hear that car just going through the rev band. And where's he going to brake? Just before the 1, I think. Halfway between the 1 and the 2. Through the left and right. Through the right. Watch this on the left here, because he can so easily pick up an off-track penalty through that and invalidate your lap time. But you need to carry the speed through the Le Mans chicane to take that speed all the way through to the finish line. What's his lap time going to be? Well, he has set the pace on his previous lap. Is he going to improve things as he comes across the line? Dipping below, that's okay in qualifying, but it's frowned upon in the, well, we say it's okay in qualifying, it's just passable, but, well, did not improve that lap time.
And as Michael Polish at Kira Wolf jumped in front of him, it is a change in the running order in the touring car class. Now, most of the LMP3 and GT4 cars have finished up their qualifying session, so should not expect to see too many changes in the running order for them, but there are a handful of the touring cars and LMP3s still yet to finish up their laps, and so we'll watch with close intrigue. The times, though, in qualifying are always so exciting. There are thousands, there are hundreds between those at the top of the fields.
Yeah, it is incredibly close, is qualifying, and, well, this is what we've come to expect, really, is this, as we have a look then at Eric Goldner through the Le Mans chicane. You can see the little tyre tracks in the grass there from people just trying to sneak as much of the curb and as much of the straight line the curb as much as possible, and then onto the straight. This is my preferred TCR, by the way, is the Veloster.
Is it?
Yes, just the back end rotates more for me with this car than others, so that's why I prefer this one, as it comes across the line now and does improve.
Does find that improvement, and because the margins are so much, 2 odd tenths of a second sees him jump up almost 3 positions at the end. And of note, Paul, both of the Hyundais are available for the drivers here today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You've got the long wheelbase Elantra. That's really good for some of the high-speed stuff. It's a more aerodynamic shape. The Veloster, though, very good through the twisty stuff.
And, well, you got that compromise of what's important here at the World Center of Racing with its high banks and the speed that comes with it, ready to go for the first of the special events for 2024. It's time to roar before the 24. Let's run you down trackside to see the starting lineup as the LMP3's debut in this iRacing Roar. It'll be Thomas Laboutelet that lines up alongside the Irishman Oscar Mangan, with almost a quarter of a second splitting the two of them. The WSR butt kicker machine of Nathan Moore then alongside with Luis Nunez behind, with Pablo Castro and Mark Fletcher in the Altitude Esports car on the outside of row number 3. Going back to 7 to find Carl Dunlop inside of Frederick Schwartz in the second of the PGZ Motorsports entries. Linus Technow and Kevin Bellens make up the rest of the top 10. Rui Rodriguez and Augustin Bernier, 11th and 12th positions, find themselves just missing out on that top 10, with Ike Weinberg and Dario Frattini the final times on the board. Nico Rubilar and Tobias Siegner with some work to do from the very back. 3 classes of competition, the GT4 smack bang in the middle of all of it, and Will Chadwick, former race winner in this iRacing Roar, will lead us to the green in the Hymo Setups Porsche. He'll be alongside the Falcon liveried door-entered machine of Damon Woods, Corin Tengunes, and then Alberto Senau alongside on row 2, the first of the McLarens making their way into the field. Nicholas Laubish sporting his new colours representing Falcon and Door is alongside his teammate Lucas Muller, while 7th sees Sven Haase in the BMW. His grid and go teammate teammate Gabriel Streitmatter is alongside. Lauren Benzo, Kieran Harrison make up the rest of the top 10, with Pascal Stix and Steen Ledger 11th and 12th position, still only about half a second off the pace. Justin Remen, that Hydra Race geodesic car, is alongside with Cody Deeth, who switched over from Williams Esports to Grid and Go for this outing. Max Esterson jumps back into the virtual world. Great to see the open wheel star back in the sim. Rico Wenzel will be company for him at the very back. It will probably be touring car madness, and Michael Polishek in that Obsidian racing machine will be at the front of it all, with Gal Valero, the Apex Racing Team driver, alongside. Kira Wolf and Fabian Siegman line up behind them, with Eric Goldner and then Roberto Ferrari 5th and 6th positions. It will be Aaron Vasquez, who was fast in practice, had the fastest first lap in qualifying back in 7th, with Anton Vedruev in the Wave Italy car alongside him. Miguel Freitas, Brandon Hawkin, Marcel Tai, and Rui Queiroz 11th through the top 12, and then Felipe Barreto, David Baker, Jack Sedgwick, Matthias Pentela, and Brad Newman through the rest of the 17-car field. Got through all of the names just as they begin to roll away. Paul, how are you feeling? What are your expectations for this one? What are the drivers feeling as they get ready to go?
Oh, they're feeling a bit of apprehension, but they're always to be feeling excitement. I'm feeling so excited I can't even get my words out. It is start of iRacing special events for 2024. I am looking forward to this one. This should be a nice little starter dish for what we've got coming up with the iRacing Daytona 24.
And a little wrench to throw into the mix as all three classes, Paul, start at the same time. So GT4s, the TCRs, as soon as the LMP3 goes, they go as well. Well, pace car off and away, and the iRacing special events ready to get going for 2024. The green flag waves at the World Centre of Racing, and we're underway for the Roar Before. Off the banking, the LMP3s will unload as they're already 3 wide behind in the GT4 field. Madness will ensue on the start. Plenty of puff of smokes as the LMP3 cars lock the brakes, but it's a tidy run for them in through the opening corner. GT4 storm angrily down off the banking and somehow will get through safely as well. Now just wait to see, Paul, if the touring cars can survive as well.
Oh, there's been some carnage in the GT4s, I can tell you, after turn number 1. So they made it through the first turn. It was then getting out of it that's the problem, as they go green flag racing. But the touring cars, they keep it nice and clean for the time being. That's good to see. And
that's Dean Ledger in the Grid and Go GT4 that's now directly in front of them after his spin, so we'll have to go and figure out what happened on the replay. That's the curse of the producer if I've ever seen one. We'll have to check out what's happening in the GT4s, because it's side by side up towards the front as onto the banking the LMP3 cars will come, and on that run down into that renamed Le Mans chicane, Will Chadwick leads those GT4 cars. This is all about racecraft, Paul, and it's fascinating to see at the start here how aggressive the drivers are trying to be.
Yeah, they're all trying to just get themselves into their position in the queue, but you don't want to be right at the very front of the queue, because you're forging that path. You're creating a big slipstream for every other car behind you to be able to get themselves some fuel saving, to get themselves that little bit of extra speed in the slipstream as well. And so certainly you want to be trying to be in that front group, sticking with the leader. And
as we come to the line, it is going to be side by side, but I think fuel saving already starting to play its part through the field. Let's not forget 2 hours and 24 odd minutes does mean that there is going to be the fuel strategy that comes into the mix, and in these low downforce LMP3 cars, one thing that some of the drivers have said is they're not necessarily the easiest to control. Kieran Harrison has just come down to the pit lane, and my suspicion is not only is that because of the damage at the front of his car, but it's going to be tangled up with some of the other chaos that we saw. Long way around for Nicholas Laubish as he really sends the Falcon Tires Porsche deep into turn 1, loses back out on corner exit as Sven Haase cuts underneath.
Nicholas Laubish yesterday announced as a new Dürr esports driver on social media yesterday, I noticed, so getting his first taste, not quite in Dürr esports livery, but certainly representing the team very well so far in the early stages in GT4, so he's looking forward to getting a good impression, giving a good impression to his new team.
Yeah, and this GT4 class, some will argue, Will Chadwick in particular, RaceBot's own, that it's more fun than GT3s. You've got less downforce, there's more reliance on the driver. That's a big send up the inside by Streitmatter and Muller on the slight backside of this train that we're watching from up above, as Laubish is inside of Alberto Senau in that McLaren as they're on the banking. That's going to see him squeak on through, because shorter distance, you're going to get through faster, and Sven Haase will try and follow, but the McLaren able to jump back into line, and this is where, if you are thinking about fuel mileage, well, you'll start to be a little bit sensible. I think that McLaren's trying to go on the offense into that chicane.
Trying to get back into the position that it just lost is what it's trying to do. The McLaren is quite strong here, it does seem, but the Porsches, the Caymans, all up at the front four are Porsches, then McLaren, then BMW, then Mercedes. So we've got a good mix at the front, but the Porsches, the 718 Cayman, does seem to be the favoured car at the front right now in GT4.
No bias here from two of the commentators for the Porsche Esports Super Cup, but what we have seen is that iRacing's BOP continues to evolve and bring cars into the mix. Oh, Alberto Senna went for a move, and he's tagged Nicolas Laubish. Somehow those are the only two cars that will get tangled up in the madness as they unload off the banking. Those two drop to the back, the rest of the field streaks on through.
Well, you mentioned about being aggressive at the start. I don't think you could get any more aggressive than that. It's very tricky, though, when you're hard onto the brakes, when you're turning at the same time. It's very easy. It just takes the slightest of contact to unsettle the car, and around it goes. So
let's begin then our sequence of replays by going back to lap 1 and figuring out what happened in this GT4 class.
So it's in the pack here, and then, car got turned. And around there goes. That's what happened to Sean Ledger. I think it must have been Kieran Harrison who was the one involved. Just got tagged. That was the slightest of touches there on that Mercedes. And it was the two teammates.
And then this is what happened into turn 1. And I did note that that's the BMW, I believe, of Sven Haase behind. Alberto Senau just assumes that Sven Haase is going to lift off the throttle, which at Daytona is not necessarily a wise idea.
Going down the middle between two cars, trying to slot between the middle of two cars into that turn 1 braking zone, maybe not the greatest of ideas, is that. And like I said, it only took the slightest of contact, and it unsettled the car. He goes into Laubish, who's the innocent victim in all of that, and now they're going to have to do all of that hard work again.
And maybe it's going to tell us what we should expect through the rest of this race, but the only two classes to have had drama at the start, the only class to have had the drama, I should say, correct myself, is GT4. LMP3 and touring cars have been relatively unperturbed. Alberto Senau, by the way, on the flatbed on the return to pit lane, as we check in with the LMP3 leaders who are working onto the banking now. Traffic not yet going to be a factor, but the first time through traffic, Paul, we know it's always the most chaotic.
It's the most chaotic because it's the leaders of that LMP3 class waking up all of those drivers in the TCRs to start with, to waking them up to, we have got faster classes on track here. And you've got to work together when it comes to negotiating traffic. And certainly you will see people make some little desperate moves to try and stick with others. But traffic management is the most important thing in a race like this, where it is an endurance race, but it's more of a sprint, if you ask me.
I've had this debate. What makes it? How long does it need to be an endurance race? And I am of the opinion that the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship races, 2 hours and 40 minutes, they're fascinating with the way strategy works, but they're not necessarily. That's a weird one, as through turn 1, looks like Mark Fletcher's lost a whole bunch of ground and running wide. That's broken them up a little bit further from the top 3. 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's a sprint race, isn't it?
Yes it is. I mean, this one especially, it's 2 hours 24 in this one, with it being the... people like to say it's a 2.4 hour race, but it's 2 hours 24. This is where decimalisation and time doesn't work together in our favour, because it can confuse people to think it. Some people do actually think this race is 2 hours 40 minutes, so it does confuse people. But yeah, this is a sprint for me in terms of endurance racing. For me, an endurance race, minimum 3 hours. Minimum. Absolutely.
Helps if I talk with my mic unmuted. Vince Cusi says 4 hours minimum for an endurance race. I don't think that's a bad categorization personally, as Luis Nunez closes in on Pablo Castro in the second train behind your leading LMP3 cars. Back over to your GT4s once again, where hopefully they've all got the memo that let's save some fuel for now. The train of Porsches runs 1 through 3, with then a Mercedes and a BMW running directly behind them as we ride back on board with Sven Haase. This is a sprint race. I think we're in agreement there, but Paul, you can hear there from Sven, he's saving some fuel, he's thinking about strategy. How many pit stops are we expecting from these cars here today?
Well,
at least touring cars, you can help there.
Well, you could easily go the hour. Well, I say easily go the hour. If you do a little bit of fuel saving, you could definitely meet the hour. It's a question of, do you actually want to absolutely fill the tank twice, or once especially, and then just do the smaller fill to get you to the end? Or do you make it more even? Make it so that you're not carrying around as much fuel and save your tyres a little bit. It's not the worst track for tyre life here, so it's not all too bad. It's a balancing act as to how you do it. The most important thing for me is fill the tank, give yourself the options, so you can, if you're still in a slipstream group in the gaggle, it gives you the options to stick with them if you're actually getting more out of that.
Did see a bit of bump drafting going on there from Damon Woods, the shot to the bow of Will Chadwick, the former race winner, of course, here in the iRacing Roar Before. How comfortable would you be leading out front? Will Chadwick clearly thinks it's not necessarily a bad place to be, as a lunge up the inside further behind. Lucas Muller trying to get past Sven Haase, and if you're saving fuel, it does open you up to these opportunistic lunges, but Muller on the outside, Haase back on the inside as you go into the kink, a corner which is scary to go side by side at the best of times.
You can do it, though. It's just you've got to have a little bit of cooperation between the two of you. You've got to make sure that the other car sort of pinches in a little bit on corner exit. Oh, touring cars are getting a little bit rowdy, and we've got the first of the lap in traffic. Here we go, Arjuna. This is what we've been waiting for.
And I think maybe this is kind of why the chaos is starting to pick up, the business starting to pick up, because they see their chances. The traffic gets split by the LMP3 cars as we try and find our way through Labudali, Mangan and Moore holding on to the 1, 2, 3 spots for the time being. Castro, Nunez and Fletcher starting to close the margins from behind. Now, remember, these are LMP3 cars running minimum downforce specification, which, Paul, does impact their braking ability.
Impacts braking. They don't have ABS on these LMP3 cars, so you will see them locking up as well. But also, you've got to remember with these LMP3 cars, they've not got the greatest of mechanical grip for low speed corners, so you might actually see GT4s and TCRs being slightly faster through the corners and being better on the braking than them. But the leaders have made their way through the TCR traffic. The rest, you can see them all ducking and weaving through the traffic there in that background shot.
This is the most fun time of the race, at least in my opinion, as a driver. It's also the most stressful. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? Well, through the Le Mans chicane, no seeming drama for the drivers in navigating through the traffic. It's all about how the gaps have closed as a result. 3 at the front suddenly has become 6 in the queue in the drafting train. And as they break the timing beam to close 7 laps now in this iRacing Roar Before, it's back down into turn number 1, where, like we mentioned, the draft plays its way all the way through the field. Touring cars now that have seen all the traffic work on through can focus on fighting in and amongst themselves once again.
Well, near enough. There is the odd straggler from LMP3 trying to work their way through, and we see the tyre smoke from the locked up brakes of the LMP3 class. But it's traffic management, it's all about opportunism as well, and you can pick up a few places, or you can gap out others that maybe you weren't able to pull away from at the start of a stint. But the touring cars should stay pretty well close together. We are seeing little gaggles breaking out now in the TCR class. So the next ones for LMP3 to face is the GT4s. The GT4s are only about 4-5 seconds quicker a lap than the TCRs around here. So it won't be too long before those LMP3s make it to these.
I think the scary thing is as well, in some ways, the fact that the GT4s, with the exception of Laubish, Ledger, Harrison and Senau, so there are 4 no longer in that leading train. One, of course, retired in the form of Alberto Senau, but they're no longer in the drafting. They're all in one line, which means it's going to be more frenetic, surely, for the traffic to find their way on through. It will be a question of how aggressive the drivers want to be. Pablo Castro goes up high and says, you know what, get me out of wherever I am, although that might also be the recognition that I have a slowdown penalty.
Yes. Yeah, him and Dario Frattini as well just had a slowdown penalty.
Oh.
So that can have... yeah, that's not the ideal line there, is that one.
That's a bit more than a slowdown penalty for Dario Frattini as he slithers his way on the apron. Now that's probably an acceptable apron usage considering the touring cars were going up high. But now Kira Wolf sees an opportunity to look on the high line, and they make door-to-door contact for the lead. The Obsidian Racing car down low is almost in slow motion as the draft plays out, but into the braking zone. Defensive line from Michael Polishek, deep on the brakes. The Honda Civic trying to go the long way around, but on the inside you can always bully the car into submission.
Oh, this isn't over yet, though. Kira won't give up without a fight. Michael Polishek as well. He is a feisty character. I've raced against both drivers in various touring car series over the years, and they are really hard charging. They will give you respectful room, but only just. You know, they will make you work hard for those positions. So right now Michael's holding on to that place in the Elantra, but those Hondas, the Civics, look really strong here. But don't forget, they have that 2% fuel cell reduction over the Elantra.
And touring car, a class where the draft is very strong. Fuel games have been strong in the past as well. Let's go back and take a look at the replay of what happened to Frattini into the chicane. It was all by himself, Paul.
Here we go then, through the chicane, clipped the curb, already losing control, and yeah, did the sensible thing, bailing out onto that road, and then just trying to find a way back on. On board then, this will give us a good look at it. Didn't look like much from off board, but on board, oh, the wheel got moved quite a bit, and yeah, doing the sensible thing, taking to that little bit of a service road, and living to fight another day.
Yep, but unfortunately, he didn't have a subsequent issue. We mentioned that Pablo had a slowdown, and then unfortunately coming through turn number 1, just car pirouettes and pitches around on him. Fortunately keeps it out of the wall and he's able to get going, although the Roar has not always been kind to Pablo.
Yeah, that's certainly gives it a boot full of throttle getting back onto the track there. Here's the GT4s then, having the LMP. Oh, look at them, they're all getting held up here into the left-hander onto the banking. The leaders right now, nowhere to go. And the really difficult thing is you're following that lead and you're thinking, I've got an opportunity. And then, oh, there's no space. I can't take advantage of that opportunity.
GT4 cars tried to take advantage of the opportunity, and in fact they will be side by side slightly further behind as Cody Deeth and Gabriel Streitmatter, I think, are running alongside. Those are teammates, in fact, here today, so they're going to want to figure that out. Will Chadwick had to hesitate for a moment on the entry into the bus stop as well. That's not ideal, but it's single file for the field as they filter through that fast chicane, and on exit back onto the banking NASCAR turn 3 and 4. You can see the gap starting to grow between what is 5th and 6th positions.
Yeah, that's where the traffic can have an effect. If you catch traffic at the wrong point, so say going into the Le Mans chicane, and you have to wait and wait and wait behind a slower class and then pull out, you lose that draft from the cars in front, and before you know it, there's no chance of you hooking up to the back of them unless they then subsequently get held up later on in the lap or in the race. So yeah, it swings and roundabouts. You can benefit but you can also lose as well as more moves being made in your GT4 class. I believe that was Lucas Muller.
I do believe that was him getting up to 7th, but I also think that because the traffic's now concertinaed the field back up together, it's not just allowed the likes of Justin Rem in 12th to sit in the draft and save the few. More importantly, Nicholas Laubich and Steen Ledger, who had dropped off the back. Remember, Ledger with the incident on the opening lap, Laubich with the incident down into turn 1 with Alberto Senau. They're not far off this train as well, and so very much GT4s could be anyone's game, as could be said for the touring cars. I mean, look at this. You got Michael Polishek, Aaron Vasquez, Kira Wolf, Fabian Siegman, Gaio Valaro, Roberto Ferrari. I mean, these are top names in the touring car category running up towards the front. And if you cycle over to the LMP3s, there are still 4 cars in contention. Now with 2 cycles through traffic done and dusted, Paul, and about 20 minutes now complete.
Do you want to know the gap through TCR? 1st to 16th is covered by 7.5 seconds.
That is crazy.
It's absolutely incredible. This TCR class has just not been separated at all, and this, I mean, you can see it on the timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen there. Matthias Penteler, who, by the way, is a very quick touring car driver in 16th right now. Jack Sedgwick, former World Championship driver, in 11th. Just shows how competitive this TCR field is right now. I
mean, yeah, Brandon Hawkins in 9th position, all things considered, which is quite crazy. And, you know, maybe some of these drivers should, I'm saying this half joking, I just want to be clear, before the pitchforks come out in social media and chat. Maybe some of these drivers will be quite relieved that Paul, Kieran Harrison and Corentin Gunes decided to take their talents over to the GT4 class instead.
Yes, and I think they're also glad that a certain Yorkshireman isn't racing in this race as well.
Wrong split, Paul.
Pinball. Oh, that's a big slide in the Elantra for the 27, and that means that Antoine Vetradov is going to lose the place to Brandon Hawkins.
Tries to now get back into line and stop Miguel Freitas from taking advantage as well, but again, swings and roundabouts of that bus stop. We're also talking about incident limit there and how important it is going to be for drivers to keep their noses clean. I believe off the top of my head, 20 incident points for the first drive-through and then 10 for every subsequent one, which if you're me at the bus stop, that means 20 laps and then 10 laps. Every 10 laps after that, you are getting a penalty. Back in time, by the way. What's happened to the GT4s down through turn 1?
Oh, a little bit of side-by-side. Oh, that is 2 drivers just getting stuck together, not wanting to give each other space. And, well, is that Sven Hasse that was one of those cars involved in that to start with? And then it's the grid and go car, and yeah, they get into the sides of each other, not really allowing each other space. They both want the same bit of asphalt.
I think it was Lauren Benzo and who was the other car? Gabriel Streitmatter that got mixed up there, but that's one of those things that sometimes when you get stuck together, you're limited on options as a driver, and so I don't think that either driver necessarily is going to feel too hard done by in regards to the driver and the way that played out. It's the risk at turn 1. You can't always bully the other driver into submission, unfortunately. Sometimes you do need to just be a little bit more aware of what's going on. You mentioned that touring cars can go 60 minutes on fuel, but Paul, let's talk the all-important tire strategy, because especially in these touring cars, you don't always need to take all 4.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'd just be taking front tyres in this race, in the touring cars, but with the amount of time it takes to fuel the car, you might as well take all 4 and just have a complete fresh set of tyres. But I like having that bit of heat in the rear tyres, because it does take a little bit longer to heat the rear tyres. For those of you who maybe have never seen TCRs before or are new to sim racing or iRacing, these TCR cars, they are all front wheel drive, so that means that all the steering and all the acceleration is done through the front wheels. The back wheels are just there to keep the back from scraping along and creating lots of sparks, and do a little bit of braking as well. So you don't really use the actual tyre tread on those rear tyres that much, especially here at Daytona. So sometimes it's actually advantageous in the TCRs to just change the front tyres and keep that heat in the rears, because they do take a lap and a half or so, or longer even in some cases, to warm up.
The LMP3 cars, by the way, are beginning to close once again, so traffic going to be a factor for these touring cars shortly. Let's see if they're going to be able to hold in this queue as they have done so far. Rui Queiroz is the only touring car driver that has just made a trip down to pit lane. Not quite sure what's happened to him. Hoping he'll be able to work on that car and bring it back out onto track before the day is done. On board with Luis Nunez though, and riding in that Ligier JS P320 is up the inside, back on through the banking they will go, and you can see that it is 4 cars within a second still in this prototype category. We've got 2 hours left to go after this lap comes to an end.
Yeah, working their way through. They're not working their way downtown, moving fast, but certainly they are giving us some great displays of car control. Now, look at this. They're getting a little bit separated. Oh, big wiggle there. And that is a huge moment. I thought there was going to be a massive accident there. Fair credit to Luis Nunez to hold on to that and not make any contact.
David Baker, I think, lost a couple of positions in reaction, but I've got to say, that could have been a whole lot worse. Looking rearwards from your race leader who goes defensive as past the traffic they will go. Top 2 now separated from those behind. Nathan Moore feeling the pressure from Luis Nunez for 3rd, but Oscar Mangan pops up high as Thomas Laboutelet covers the inside. Back off the banking as the cars unload. Low downforce spec, no drama for these machines as they hold on to the brakes. Nunez locks up that left front once again, but that was a moment that could have been a lot closer and a lot worse for all involved.
My goodness, that was heart in mouth, though. That really was. As now into the international horseshoe, these TCRs and LMP3s go. And again, it's all about opportunism. It's all about trying to find the gaps. And Mark Fletcher, well, he's trying to use that downforce to his advantage there to try and work his way through the traffic, whereas Carl Dunlop, Frederick Schwartz are getting stuck behind and in that TCR traffic. So certainly Fletcher's trying to make a breakaway in 5th place right now for that Altitude Esports team. And
well, this is the swings and roundabouts, and you can't really control it. It's now 5 seconds that the top 4 enjoy in a gap to those behind, and now a chance for them with the 2-hour mark now being struck in terms of race distance remaining to maybe settle into this race. Touring cars haven't been split up by the traffic so far. There are still some of the LMP3 class to work through them, but as you check back in with GT4s, for a moment, Sven Haase feeling a little bit of pressure to try and close back up towards your leaders, and it's a Porsche breakaway at the front. If we're thinking about fuel and the way the BOP has worked and how these drivers are all thinking about the margins, is Sven Haase still trying to cover a bit more fuel off, and the Porsche is able to go a bit more aggressive now?
It certainly looks that way, but yeah, it's certainly pushing on. And you've seen Lucas Muller has been trying to get involved with those drivers in front as Damon Woods looks to take the lead of GT4. But yeah, you've seen Lucas and Sven getting into each other on multiple occasions in this race, so it's maybe that Lucas feels that he needs to try and hang on to the back of these 3 leading Porsches. Will Chadwick, I think right now, has been thinking, I've been forging a path for nearly half an hour, I need a little bit of fuel saving myself.
Not a bad strategy, and I think that is probably what racecraft in these sort of affairs is all about. Just want to point out, by the way, I think there's some chat on the RaceBot TV channels about the various I ratings in the field. Aaron Vasquez, I do believe the highest with 11,000 I rating, which is ridiculous in and of itself. But I just want to point out that Sven Haase, I'm pretty sure, is racing under one of his non-main accounts, and that still has 10,335 I rating. All I have to say to that is what?
He's too greedy.
share some with us, I agree.
Yes, please. I could do with all the help I could get. But yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy, that level that some of these drivers can work to, and the fact that they have an alternate account that has just as high a I rating as their main one is just absolutely nuts. Do notice that because of the leaders changing on that last lap in GT4. Sven Hasse has caught up to the back of that lead trio, so that BMW still sticking in the slipstream and will be helping him along on the bankings here.
It's a run now as well, with you see the gap that they have back to Cody Deeth. It's a full 1.9 seconds. I would not be shocked if there is a little bit more of the fuel saving not being done with Damon Woods being the driver at the front of the class, but that's a little bit all of speculation from me, at least for the time being. With your LMP3 cars, there's still 4 cars at the front leading by around 5 seconds right now. I don't know if they're going to get to traffic or not before reasonably, and with some sort of strategy mindset, they could think about coming down into pit lane. Usually you would think, Paul, traffic, let me get away from that by trying something in pit lane. But at Daytona in particular, if you catch them all on the banking, you don't necessarily lose that much time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Arjuna. It's all about if you catch traffic, slow traffic at the Le Mans chicane or through one of the horseshoes, either at the International Horseshoe, which we're seeing right here, as Sven Hasse actually makes the move there. So gaining up into 3rd place now, Corentin Guinez down to 4th. So there's a little bit of fuel shenanigans going on for those drivers. But yes, if you catch traffic, slower traffic through these horseshoes, it really has a worse effect than if you catch them coming onto the banking and down the straights. It really does have that big implication. The slower corners, you lose more time in slower corners. It sounds strange, but it's true, trust me.
Look, I'm just thinking forward now to next week's iRacing Daytona 24. I mentioned it during our pre-show, but this is traditionally, the Roar in the real world is a test event for drivers to get ready for the main event. What do you learn by heading to this track in a GT4 machine, or let's say an LMP3 machine, as opposed to a GTD, as opposed to a GTP pool? What are some of the things that you think drivers can be taking moving into what is the biggest sim race of the year?
Personally, I think that they're learning how the racing's going to go. It's giving them a bit of experience in pack racing as well, because we are going to see an element of pack racing next week in the 24, so it just gives you that bit of experience around the track as well. It gives you that little bit of I know they do plenty of practice beforehand, as Will Chadwick looking to the inside but not making any moves, but it just gives you that little bit of practice of being in a race situation, because as much testing as you possibly can do, either on your own or with teammates, it doesn't replicate being in an actual race against other competitors. So really what you want to do is try and get yourselves involved in as many races as possible to give you that extra experience that you don't get just from doing testing.
The world's slowest landing plane comes into land at the Daytona International Airport, just in the backdrop of the shot as we came into that second hairpin.
Didn't somebody actually figure out and work out the speed of that?
There is. I was just going there. You read my mind. There's a wonderful Reddit thread, and I say wonderful Reddit thread knowing that usually those are not words that go together. But it is genuinely such a fascinating read where someone who was much smarter than me went through and figured out, based on what they observed in the sim, the landing route that the planes were using, the speeds that they had on landing and takeoff, and basically found that iRacing may be great as a motorsport simulator, but it maybe still has some work to go before we can make it a proper flight sim.
Yeah, God,
can you imagine Dave Cable's ultimate air model?
Yes. Yeah, that would be some DLC, that's for sure. See that slipstream coming into effect here in the Porsches, and Will Chadwick is just going to give it a little boop. There you go, just a little bit of bump drafting. You're more used to seeing that with NASCAR around here, but you will see that in the next this week and next week as well. A little bit of bump drafting going on.
Hey, we've done bump drafting here on the sim, especially at Daytona now, going on End of 2022 was when we first really saw it kick off in earnest as the Apex Racing team bumped their way to victory in the final round of the 2022 IMSA Esports Global Championship. But yes, definitely still been something that we've seen in the years since, to the point where it was no longer permitted in the 2023 IMSA Esports Global Championship when we returned here to the World Centre of Racing. Back into the GT4 traffic come the leaders in the LMP3 prototype category. Luis Nunez on the outside. Remember, these are low downforce LMP3s, and they have less downforce than the P2s and the GTPs above them. So when you're on the outside through the kink, it's a scary place to be. I've also mentioned that the lack of downforce impacts the braking performance of the car, because one thing that you maybe don't understand unless you are a downforce driver, it's something I had to adapt to as I first began to get into these cars. Paul, you trust the downforce when you first get onto the brakes because it really helps you in how much speed you can bleed off initially, but then as the downforce rolls off, you also need to roll off your braking potential, and when you have low downforce, you don't really have much braking potential then.
Yeah, don't forget that drag is squared with your velocity as well. So the more velocity you have, the more downforce that you'll have. So
okay,
as
Dr.
you're
Smith.
As you're braking, you can give it a full jab of the brakes to start with, because you've got all that downforce, because you've got that grip pushing the tyres into the asphalt, and then as you bleed off that speed, you have to start gradually just bleeding off the braking as well, or else you will just lock up tyres. And we're still seeing these LMP3s occasionally locking up that front left, as you see them dragging the front left through turn number 1. So yeah, it is definitely a case of having to adjust your braking, learn how to brake into these slower speed corners.
Vince Cusi saying these setups have about 0 downforce, but that is the point. Even an LMP3 car does actually have a decent amount of aerodynamic performance. A Radical actually has quite a bit of aerodynamic performance. That's why a lot of people, when they're wanting to jump into an LMP3 car, you actually will maybe start with some of those Radicals on your way up through the ladders. And so it's also quite fascinating, given that, Paul, when I started on iRacing, there were 3 prototypes. You had the LMP1, the HPD, effectively LMP2 car, and then, let's be honest, it may be the worst prototype in all of human history, the Daytona prototype, in an era of motorsport which was meant to be cost effective. So I recognize why it was terrible. Oh, as we got a battle there for 3rd position, Nathan Moore passed by Luis Nunez into the bus stop. He gets a big old tang slapper on exit, but the ladder that these drivers have to work through as Oscar Mangan takes advantage to go to the lead. LMP3 builds to LMP2, builds to GTP. It just gets faster and faster for these drivers as they continue to progress.
This is just getting crazy as this. This is fantastic. It's given us plenty of excitement here as they're now having to work through those TCRs once again. And we are heading towards the first pit stop window for these LMP3s as well. So the weight will have been dropping off of them. And is it now that Oscar Mangan, has said, you know what? Now's the time to pull the trigger, really push on, and get a bit of a shift on to try and get some pace there. Oh, those TCRs having to react. Oh, I thought there was going to be a big accident there.
And, well, Luis Nunez wants to try and make it 3 wide, but I've got to say that's not necessarily the wisest thing to do, as the battle for the touring car lead intensifies amidst this LMP3 battle. Behind Luis Nunez, Nathan Moore split one of those Honda Civics. I've got to say, I'm a little bit nervous right now. I'm a little bit scared once again. It feels like a race start, but as we peel off out of the traffic, back onto the banking once more, 4 cars still only split by 1.9 seconds.
Oscar Mangan was able to get a little bit of a gap there, though. That helped him. Did that one with Thomas Labute having to just get on the slow pedal because that TCR was coming across, taking its line. The thing is, TCRs were doing exactly what these faster class drivers ask. Run their line. You're predictable. You know where those cars are going to be. It's just when you try and stick your nose in somewhere as a faster class car, it can sometimes backfire on you.
Let's take a look at that track map. We haven't quite yet seen the GT4s and the touring cars overlap, but that is right now what Will Chadwick, Damon Woods are starting to deal with. Chadwick, importantly, back in front of Woods in the battle of fuel saving. He's clearly decided that at this point he'd rather be in front once more, as past a couple of the touring cars they will work diving back down low, and now the gaps in this GT4 gaggle are starting to grow.
Yeah, it is starting to just eke out, and well, the worst time for traffic and the biggest nightmare if you're in that middle class, the GT4s, is when you finally are all together, all three classes together. You're trying to work your way past the TCRs whilst also keeping an eye on your mirrors for the LMP3s coming through as well, and this is the ultimate test of racecraft now for all these drivers as to how they work their way through traffic.
So the gap to the peloton in GT4, which I will just lead by saying is being led by Cody Deeth with a Mercedes AMG that is not as long as it was when it rolled off the factory. Is that maybe the best way to describe it now, Paul?
Yeah, it's not good to be going back on the forecourt straight away as that car. It's going to need a little bit of work, that's all. Of course, never raced or rallied, honest. Oh, that's an LMP3 spun around. Who is that? That's car 40.
And Augustin Bernier might just have clipped one of those grid and go cars in his attempt being the operative word, to rejoin as the rest of the field streaked on through. The front of the GT4 field is now heading off into the heart of the touring car traffic, and this is where Will Chadwick has seen his opportunity. He's 1.2 seconds clear and now going to try and launch himself and slingshot through these TCRs to break clear of those behind. This is a masterclass. Let's not forget Chadwick won this on strategy a couple of years ago, but did it by saving fuel rather than breaking away like he's trying to do here.
This could be a great opportunity to break clear. You're absolutely right, and with the lap times not being quite as big between the TCRs and the GT4s, as we said, only about 4 seconds or so between the two classes, it really does make it a little bit more challenging for the GT4s to actually make their way through that traffic. And in some cases, touring cars can actually be a little bit quicker, a little bit later on the brakes than GT4s, so it's a really interesting dynamic between these two classes.
I enjoy watching how these drivers are just trying to figure out what's going on. Let's not forget, 48 started this race. We've only had the 2 retirees so far in Lauren Benzo and Alberto Senau. We'll see if anyone else is going to join them, although just of note, we have got a couple of drivers down on pit lane, not just Gabriel Streitmatter, but also Max Esterson sitting there and dropping off the jacks and now getting ready to launch himself back out in his Mercedes AMG GT4 machine. So pit stop cycles beginning. Let's see how they'll play out from here, as for your LMP3 drivers, still 4 at the front, and now the gap behind to Mark Fletcher in that Altitude Esports car down to 4.5 seconds. These drivers have all started to run a relatively steady time as Oscar Mangan continues now to set the pace.
Mark Fletcher's quite lonely there, though, in 5th place, because, yeah, there's about 4 and a bit seconds between him and the leader, but there's about 4 and a bit seconds between him and 6th place. That traffic worked out beautifully for Mark, but he's sat all on his own now, so he's got nobody to give him a bit of a draft, but he's also not dragging anyone along with him as well. So it's yeah, it's good in one way, but it's not good in another way, because he's not saving that fuel that he would in a draft.
No, but I think at this point, I think he just wants to try and latch on to those in front, and might even decide a short fill in the pit stops is worth it. Might compromise him later in the race, yes, on that second pit stop call, but ultimately keeps him in the draft, and races can be won or lost here by track positioning either side of this first pit stop. As Fletcher, we watch on board with him, very close to the wall, but these are the margins that the top level esports drivers are capable of working with. Some margins that make me feel just a tad less comfortable. Can you imagine, I've just got to say, by the way, Paul, let alone being a teammate during the iRacing Daytona 24. I know that feeling. It's stressful watching your teammate work through traffic. Can you imagine being a team manager, just watching on and saying, oh, I hope my boys stay out of trouble?
Well, I mean, I know from past experience of being a crew chief in a team in a 24-hour race, and you're not really thinking about, oh, just keep it clean, I hope they do well. You're actively telling them, right, you've got traffic closing up 5 seconds back, 3 seconds back, right, and you're calling out where the traffic has been just to try and give as much help as possible to your driver to keep it nice and clean. So you've got to keep an eye on the traffic behind, but you've also got to keep an eye on what's happening ahead in case there's any incidents to talk your driver through those incidents. It is a stressful job, is being a crew chief in one of these endurance races.
Calais, the team manager over at Grid & Go, says that watching is not as fun as he hoped when he first started. Yes, I can confirm that feeling, and it only gets more stressful the higher up that you jump in the ladders of esports as well. So we mentioned that Will Chadwick breaking away. He's almost 2 seconds clear of those behind right now. This is a play to try and get clear before the cycle of pit stops begins. TCR, though, I mean, you look at how they're running behind, still waiting for some of those final GT4 passes to come and that final bit of lap traffic to finish off. At Aaron Vasquez still tucked behind Michael Polishek, with Kira Wolf, Fabian Siegman, Gao Valero, Roberto Ferrari, and Eric Golden with the rest of the top 7. An order that hasn't really changed much in the, last 30 minutes or so.
No, not at all, but I think that Polishek will be probably thinking, maybe I should have allowed one or two of these other cars just to give me a bit of slipstream for a while to do a bit of fuel saving to help me out here. But certainly as more of those GT4s come working way through TCR class, it's just, unfortunately for Polishek, there's very little that he can do rather than just racing his race, hitting his marks, and hoping that the pit stop cycle works out nicely for him, as there you go, for the lead of TCR. And there's also GT4 traffic coming through as well. This is the compromises that you have to make as a racer, not only when you're in the lead of a class, but also when you're that lapping traffic coming through.
I don't think Aaron Vasquez wanted to lead there, and his going to the outside was just him saying, all right, I can save a bit of fuel here and run through. We officially have an hour and 40 minutes left to go, by the way. There was a bit of chatter about whether this is a sprint or an endurance race. Dan Yeaman suggested that's a question that also sort of depends on whether it's a team race or a solo race. I tend to agree with that. I would also say it tends to vary depending on which track you go racing at, because 4 hours at Daytona is a little different than 4 hours at the Nordschleife, just to give you a bit of an example and a counterpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. You think, how many laps? I mean, the TCRs are on lap 23 of their race, just about to start lap 24 of their race. Look at the Nordschleife. In a TCR, you're lucky to get how many laps in an hour? 8?
If that. Because
7?
Don't GT3 cars do 8 laps in an hour?
Yes, they'll be about 6 in an hour. Then we'll the touring cars.
6 pretty good laps, let's be honest, but yes. It's a very different kettle of fish, isn't it? And 4-hour VLN races in the past, right? I've done that. Plenty of people in iRacing have done that before. But I think back to, was it the 2022 iRacing Daytona 24 when Govan Keeney did 10 hours straight at the beginning and was leading when he gave the car over to his teammate Pablo Castro. I mean, Daytona is just one of those tracks where you can settle into a rhythm like no other, and so, I don't know, a sprint endurance race, as RaceSpot's own Stefan Schlacker calls it in the RaceSpot chat, probably suits it quite nicely, you'd have to say.
Yeah, Daytona, it's quite unique in that you've got long stretches where you're not having to be full focus, you can relax a little bit, so it's actually a little bit easier for these drivers on occasion, especially when you get onto the banking, as long as you're not lapping traffic, of course. But when you get onto the banking, like the leaders of LMP3 are right about now, you could just sort of relax your brain a little bit and be like, right, how's the car, how's it feeling, what's my fuel level like, and you can just do your little bit of admin on board before then focusing up into the braking zone of the Le Mans chicane, and then again that little bit of a relaxation until you get into the braking zone for turn 1, and that's a really early lift and coast there.
I think that was the understanding that there was some traffic in front that they didn't want to get to too early. You see Luis Nunez lost a bunch of momentum on exit because he had to half lift off the right foot. Nathan Moore's got the momentum, but I don't think he's going to try and pass just yet because touring cars in front up high. They pass one of the Audi RS3 LMS machines. The gap up to Oscar Mangan, 1.2 seconds. Laboudelet's got to be very careful here in his BS competition car not to lose track of that point man as on to the in towards
Fletcher.
turn one they will go. There was a car down to pit lane and it was Mark Fletcher.
Yeah, so he's pitting before everybody else in the LMP3s. This is going to be interesting to see how this strategy works. Is it just a case of he was leading that second group, wasn't he, for so long, and then running on his own? Is it just a case of he's had to take this fuel now?
Well, he's taking tyres as well. That's a mark that we were kind of curious to see how it was going to go. Fuel and tyres seemingly done at the same time, much as they do in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship as well, let's not forget. And so as Oscar Mangan tries to dice his way through some more touring cars, right then left he will go. Laboudelet's BS competition car slides up the inside of Eric Goldner, I do believe, as around goes Mangan. Drama with traffic, and the Irishman will be hoping there's no damage on his car as well.
That is huge. That is absolutely huge. Oscar Mangan was looking like he was on for a good placing right there with that gap that had been built up through the traffic there. I don't think he's going to be best pleased. Let's have a look then and see what happened. Is it a case of he's just turned in tight as he got caught up with somebody? Oh, yeah, running a little bit into two lines converging. I think that's what I would say there on that one.
And once again, once they got stuck together, there was not really much that either of them could have done in that situation. And just looking at that, I would be shocked if Mangan has lasting damage to the car. There may be a little bit of damage to the temperament. You have to see how he goes from here. Luis Nunez has been aggressive, and so maybe no surprise to see him be one of the earliest drivers in that leading queue down to pit lane. Oscar Mangan decides to stay out, which is interesting given that his tyres will be screaming out in agony.
Yeah, and that's it. Once you get that little bit of heat into the car, into the tyres, it takes a while for you to drop that heat out of the tyres. Luis Nunez, as you say, onto pit road. So Oscar Mangan, the worst thing he can do now is drive angry. He needs to just focus up and just be like, right, okay, that happened, I need to get back into my rhythm. And if you start driving angry, and it's easier to said than done, that is for sure, but if you start driving angry, you're being too aggressive into corners, you're missing your braking points, you make more mistakes, you end up going slower.
And that's where I was kind of wondering, would it have made sense anyway, naturally, to come into pit lane and just give yourself the mental reprieve of a second of going, right, let me step back and say, that may not have been my fault, may not have been the other car's fault. Doesn't matter, that's been the past. And let's focus on the task at hand. I say that knowing that, Paul, I was not the driver that was capable of doing that, and I hope that Oscar Mangan is. Watching as Luis Nunez rejoins the action. That's Mark Fletcher in front of the Ultra GT sports car. So a shorter pit stop, seen the 38 jump in front of the 32. And is that going to be a bit of a sign for what the other LMP3 machines will be thinking about?
That is really, really interesting. You say it was 3 seconds slower cone to cone for Fletcher over Nunez. So, and crucially for Fletcher as well, he's got a car in between the two of them that has yet to pit here as well. So he's got the pace right now. He can maybe try and just gap out a little bit over the car of Luis Nunez. But we're looking for when the leaders of LMP3 are going to be coming onto pit road, because this is going to be where we see how things pan out now.
Still close in both your GT4s and touring car categories. There's now a 9-car train at the front of the TCR class. GT4s, 5 at the front, as we've been following for quite a while. Sven Haas at the very tail end of that grouping, the only non-Porsche as well. So quite impressive to see that even with how he's been running, it's not necessarily been going the way that he wants. That's the leaders in the LMP3 class working around there outside as well. This has been great, Paul. What a start we've had to the iRacing special event. And 90 minutes from now, Daytona always finds a way to deliver. Hopefully, we get a grandstand finish.
The amount of times I've called race finishes across the line where there's literally been 0.000ths of a second between cars, and it's been to the 10,000ths of a second. It just shows just how close you can have. I mean, let's not forget as well, in Full Metal Racing, how many times have we seen the MX-5 series around here give us an absolute showcase final lap? These drivers will give us that as well. I can assure you of that. You do not want to go anywhere. There's even more bump drafting going on.
Let's not forget, by the way, that with some of that bump drafting, you need to make sure you're hitting the car as square as possible to avoid looping the cars around, especially if you're on the banking. It's a pit party, though, for the chasing peloton in the LMP3 class. Frederick Schwartz is going to lead Rui Rodriguez, Linus Technow, Pablo Castro, Kevin Bellens, and, well, half, effectively, of your LMP3 cars into pit lane. It goes to show, A, that the cars at the front have been setting a remarkable pace, all while saving a decent amount of fuel, all things considered.
Yeah, and that's what the top drivers can do, which is something that's completely unfathomable to me when I'm behind the wheel. I must have a lead right foot or something like that, because I can't go quick and also fuel save at the same time. It's one or the other. It's like a binary mode. It's either yes or no for me. And yet, some of these absolute top drivers can able to keep that pace but also be able to eke the fuel out at the same time. It's a great skill. Takes a lot of practice for these drivers. Nathan Moore, I imagine we're going to be seeing these two heading down pit road this lap.
And that would have been 32 complete laps of racing. Now, we didn't have to do a full formation lap. It's only a partial formation lap, but every little bit that you can get out of the fuel tank really does matter. They duck down to the left and both indicating onto pit lane. Labudali says, you know what, let me make sure I get into my marks first. And this is his first major iRacing event. He's traditionally a bit of a Gran Turismo competitor, but of course partnered up with BS Competition, such a strong iRacing team as well. It's great to see him with almost 8,000 iRating as well, clearly showing that speed is speed no matter what platform you're on. Into the box they will go, and not up on the jacks for Nathan Moore, quite interestingly. Oscar Mangan says after that incident, give me some tires please and thank you.
Yeah, he'll be onto the blower straight away after that incident saying, yeah, pit stop, tyres please. And that is for sure. But here's Mark Fletcher. This is a sort of little bit of a benchmark as to the pit stops that we've been seeing here, because Mark, of course, had that slightly quicker pit stop, only 34.5 seconds, 36.8 seconds for Thomas Laboucle, who's come out of pit road right now. And yeah, he's going to be clear of Fletcher when he gets onto the loud pedal. But I'll tell you what, Fletcher, it's closed him up to that group. And to be honest, taking a little bit less fuel might actually be worth it if it brings you back to a gaggle where you can then save fuel.
He's come out in front of Nathan Moore, so I think that shows it was not a bad call, all things considered. So a bit of a change in the running order with the first pit stop cycle in the books for the LMP3 cars. Oscar Mangan tries to get himself and his tires up to temperature as these drivers now focus on the touring car traffic that they have been deposited directly into. The Ultra GT sports car closes directly up to the back of Oscar Mangan as well. Labudale's gone. I've got to say, he came out in the perfect position, clear of all of that traffic.
Yeah, and that's it. That's where the gods of traffic giveth and the gods of traffic taketh away for others. As a bit of drama out wide there for Luis Nunez. So yeah, not all going Luis's way here in this race, and that means losing out a bit more time, and it's going to be a same situation. Yeah, it's two lines converging between the two, and that's the problem with these LMP3 cars. They're not got as much mechanical grip through the slower speed corners, and that is a touring car hitting an Armco barrier.
Well, so that is Luis Nunez, isn't it? That is trying to get through. And that's just a little bit clumsy. You cannot go 3 wide on the exit of that flip-flop into the International Horseshoe.
It was impatience was that from Nunes. I think he's got a little bit wound up, and this is what I was saying about trying to control your emotions. He's got a bit wound up there, tried to force his way through on touring cars when there wasn't the space there, and well, the innocent victim of all of that has ended up into the wall.
You can see that Mark Fletcher has got past Oscar Mangan. Nathan Moore now does so as well. Maybe that is a bit of the new tyre call not working for Mangan as he tries to fire them up into the window, but ultimately it did look as though Labudele had taken tyres, and so he's not had such a struggle in being able to get them back up and up to speed. Steen Ledger has come down to pit lane in the GT4 category, which I would suspect indicates that maybe some of these contenders will be thinking about pit stops sooner rather than later. It's still Will Chadwick that leads though, from Corentin Gunes, Damon Woods, Lucas Muller and Sven Haase, the top 5 as they run right now. As if you check back in with the LMP3 cars, they're not done chopping and changing. More now past Fletcher for second.
Steen Ledger, don't forget, was involved in that incident on lap 1, wasn't he? So was caught up in a little bit of the shenanigans that happened at the start, so maybe decided now was a good time to pit. In fact, a number of GT4s now onto pit road from the second group, so that lead group, they're still staying out there, but others deciding now's the time to pit. Nicholas Laubish, Pascal Stix, Cody Daith and Rico Wenzel as well, those onto pit road.
Of course, silly season is a construct that in sim racing basically exists year-round, but with the Urano Esports unfortunately closing doors on the final day of 2023, all their drivers searching for new homes. And as, whoa, Corentin Gunes almost runs into the back of Will Chadwick, Nicholas Laubish has found a new home and looks very good, I must say, in his new colours. We'll get back to that story in a second, because that is a driver not very happy as Corentin Gunes flashes the lights in frustration as to what just happened.
Corentin is a very, very quick driver. I can assure you of that. I've raced against him. I've raced in the same races as him in touring cars. He's incredible in those. And he's able to then translate that across into different classes and different categories of cars. He's just a quick driver, is Corentin. So he's certainly trying to show that, right, I want to get to the front of the field here and get to show who's boss now at this point as we head on to the pit stop cycle. And yeah, those GT4 cars, getting to around about the time to head onto pit road for the leaders now. Should be this lap or so. As yes, ducking down Will Chadwick and Gunes. Are they going to have a race to the line? No, Chadwick's going to stay ahead.
Chadwick did the right thing there as well, which just cover the inside, because you can all see them jockeying for position, and you have to be careful because there's a blend point at which the cars no longer go. So they all fortunately work through safely, and the field is down on pit lane as well. They cannot go longer than 32 laps. We found the critical mark for the fuel tank.
Yeah, absolutely. And with an hour and 23 to go in this race, that means that they will have to make that splash and dash. So they've made it an hour, have these cars. The TCRs, by the way, well, they're very frugal and obviously the economical version of that. Although I will say, I was talking to somebody last year about TCRs, and the actual car is relatively cheap to buy in terms of race car standings, but to actually run them is about the same cost as a GT3 Cup car.
Has Will Chadwick been caught out by a pit lane speeding penalty?
No. It's not showing a black flag.
Something's not right in this pit stop. It's a 57.5 second stop. Now, I do know there is the potential for some slightly different calls on strategy, but Will Chadwick has topped that car off to the brim. Damon Woods, in contrast, spent, what was the end result, almost 17 seconds shorter in the box itself. He will take over the race lead as we merge back out onto track. Will Chadwick is going to end up in the second grouping behind, and hoping the strategy works in his direction.
Yeah, so, this is why I love endurance racing. It's all about strategy as well as the racecraft on track, and strategy only takes you so far as long as you're with cars and drivers of a similar pace to you. If you get strategy play and you decide to absolutely brim the car, unlike some, and then that gets you stuck into traffic which you are slightly quicker than, but not necessarily quick enough to just drive past them, and that can really hinder your race. So it's that balancing act as to when you do pit and for how long. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Damon Woods, Lucas Muller, Corentin Guinez, all around about the 40-second to 46-second mark on pit road.
And I will go back to 2022, the year that Will Chadwick won this race. It happened on strategy, but I don't recall it necessarily going like this. Last year was all about Urano Esports at the front, where, if I recall correctly, they were 1, 2, and 3 at the line in the GT4 class, which was the top class last year. Chadwick's got some work to do. It's very, very separated, though, at the front of this GT4 class now, whereas Damon Woods tries to go around some touring car entries. Lucas Muller's around 1 second back, so a pair of teammates to work together there. Of course, Falcon livery, Door Esports livery, but run under the same banner. Corentin Guinez 6 seconds back, Justin Rem and Sven Haase, then the rest of the top 5. As they're working past, though, the touring car class, let's give them a little bit of love once again, because, Paul, I feel like we haven't necessarily been focused too much on them as we get ready to see the touring cars also into pit lane.
And still 4 seconds covering the top 9 in TCR, so that just shows how they've just all been just stuck together in a queue, and even with cars coming through lapping them, it's not really separated them out that much. I mean, you look down to 15th as 18.5 seconds, so it's still not that great a gap between all the TCR class here. So yeah, definitely been interesting to see this one. David Baker, he's dropped down the order into 14th. Saw him in and around just outside the top 10, so something's not quite gone his way. Speaking of not going the way, that's Rico Wenzel.
And as he rejoins, watch as Nicholas Laubisch grab another spot away from him, but I think it's time for us to go back in time once again. Haven't had to look at too many replays, fortunately, today, at least compared to Friday night primetime yesterday, where Peter Mackay, alongside myself, at Watkins Glen, spent most of the 45 minutes looking at things that had already happened. This is off in towards, well, what has been a bit of a problem spot, and, well, this is not deja vu. Oh, was there contact there with Will Chadwick?
Again, it's the very slightest of contacts if there is, and yes, that's just a slight bit of contact pushed around. The loud pedal works both ways well.
I'm a little bit surprised at the long stop as well, because my initial gut feeling coming into that pit stop window was, especially based on what Mark Fletcher was doing, track position is key, Paul. And so the long pit stop, maybe it's going to work well, maybe it's not. The reality is we'll only find out in about an hour and 20 minutes time. This is why we're in the booth, because we have absolutely no idea usually what's happening in terms of strategy.
Yeah, nobody really tells us, do they? They keep it close, the cards close to the test, so to the chest on that one. But what I will say is Nathan Moore is starting to close up on your race leader overall. Last lap was just under half a second quicker than your race leader, so that will ebb and flow with traffic. And speaking of traffic, Nathan Moore is now going to find himself some, but yeah, that lead gap has been coming down ever so slightly. More 42 seconds, call it, on the actual pit stop. 36.5 for Thomas Leboutle. So if Moore can get onto the back of your race leader, he's got a tremendous opportunity here.
You read my mind, Paul, right? As you started talking about those pit stop times, it magically appeared on screen in synchrony. I've just been having some messages through from the virtual paddock about GT4 strategy, by the way. One opinion is that the long stop is something that's bad to do in the first stint, because it means that you have a shorter stop in the second part of the race. Can't take tires. Maybe that's going to be a factor there. I'm just trying to remember. I feel like Will Chadwick did the strategy that those at the front are doing now to win a couple of years ago, but I do too many races and my memory is, well, about as effective as a goldfish. And it's only getting worse every year.
How many broadcasts was it last year?
Too many is the answer
Yes.
to that. It's the only legally correct answer to that, so I don't get in trouble from the health and safety bobs. TCR, by the way, someone had mentioned they'd come in around 90 minutes to go. What that also somewhat implies is they can go 90 minutes, hypothetically. That means 20 more minutes before the window for them would come to an end.
And right now, those leading group will not want to pit, because if you lose that slipstream, you just lose so much pace for these TCRs. They've got about 350 horsepower around that sort of mark you can be pushing, which compared to your GT4s and LMP3s, it just takes that little bit longer for them to get up to their top speed with that extra weight in the car as well. So that just means that they're wanting to run in the slipstream, because it just makes it that little bit easier for their cars if they're behind a gaggle of cars. As more lap traffic coming through on the leading TCRs. But we're well and truly mixed now when you look at that lead gaggle. In fact, your overall leader is working his way through the TCR class right now.
Yeah, the dots very much now seeing three classes interacting with one another. There's the race leader, Laboudelet, around the outside of all of the major contenders. He had a 36.4 second stop, just to reiterate, so he might owe us a couple of extra seconds to Nathan Moore in that final pit stop sequence, but nice tidy run for him so far, and that's all you can ask for sometimes at Daytona. I was having this conversation yesterday, I think, with someone. Paul, I've raced in basically all the endurance special events. I've finished almost all of them. The one that I've never finished in, what was it, 4 or 5 attempts, the iRacing Daytona 24.
I never finished the Daytona 24, and I vowed never to compete in it again, because it's just one of those races where I don't get on with the track, with driving it. It's, in terms of absolute driving and driving enjoyment, it's not up there for me. For driving. In terms of the racing it can produce,
yes,
absolutely outstanding, brilliant, fantastic track for that. But in terms of enjoyment of driving, I don't know. I'm just not a fan myself, and I never got on with it until I think it was about 2017 was the last time I tried the 24, and I said, "Yep, no, that's it. I'm hanging up the gloves."
It is a bit hard to motivate to practice by yourself at a track like this, knowing that the way that you practice solo is not necessarily how you're going to race when it really counts. Yes, the fuel saving might be similar, but yeah, the wheel-to-wheel stuff's very, very different. Yeah, I'm glad that we see this place once a year and then we never see it again. Having said that, like you say, it always just produces some decent racing, and that's maybe what we should be looking at. Because I think I'm like you, where I can't count how many finishes I've called here, where the margins have been thousands rather than hundreds.
Yeah, it always seems to produce something, does this venue, in terms of a finish, and we see it time and again, and it's great for that. It's absolutely wonderful for that. Here we are, Will Chadwick on board, backing out early, decided to just sit in behind your TCR race leader of Michael Polacek, and then looking for the gap down the inside. So Will Chadwick right now is 8th in class. In this gaggle of cars that have got a little bit of a gap towards the race leaders. About 10 seconds is Sven Hasse and Justin Rem off of your race leader in GT4. So they've got a bit of work to do. But Chadwick, I'm not convinced by this strategy call.
You know what it could also potentially be? iRacing's new auto fuel system is magical. It really is. Except when you don't want it to be an impact, but you forgot to uncheck it, which, just to be clear, is not iRacing's problem. It's, as we call in the software,
It's a problem between computer and chair. Yes.
We've got a term in the software industry for it, PEBCAC. Now, it doesn't mean it hurts any less, but yeah, I did get confirmation as well that Will Chadwick did do the short stop and then the long stop to win in 2022. So, again, I'm just speculating and postulating, but that's most of what we do up here in the broadcast booth. Anyway, speaking of speculating and postulating, one thing that many people have predicted in the last 12 months, especially heading out of the Roar and Daytona last year, Paul, is that this year we'd come back for the iRacing special events and we'd have rain. While that's not the case, iRacing's close. We're almost there. And can you imagine how much more chaotic this race would be if we threw that into the mix?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the mysterious iRacing update happens on a Tuesday before Daytona, and magically at 3 a.m. we get rain. No, that's not going to happen. They've said it's not going to happen as well. I personally am happy that they're taking the time to get it right,
Yes.
because there is a lot of things to do right. It's not just the art side of things, of how it looks. It's the performance optimization as well that you've got to get right. As Nathan Moore, looking to come to the lead of this race, is that a case of Thomas Laboutelet saying, do you know what, I'll be happy to sit in your draft there. But back to that subject of rain, it's also about how it performs, how the cars perform, how the tyres perform in those conditions as well, and how the different tyres, the slick tyres, deal with that transition period where it's not quite wet enough for you to pit, but it's also wet enough that it causes you issues. It's all of that. You've got to put all of that together. I was about to say, are they literally going to bump draft in prototypes? That's not necessarily a good idea.
I mean, Laboutelet comes from the Gran Turismo World Tour scene. I mean, bump drafting, is it allowed in the rule book? I'd have to go back and look at my notes to remember, but different series do have rules about whether bump drafting is permitted or not. To your point about like the performance on rain as well, one thing that I am very curious about is how it's going to work with setups in particular, right? Because you don't get the chance in the real world to bring the car in, completely change its setup, and send it back out there in the middle of a race. You've got to dial in that adjustability, that flexibility into the car, and so whoever can be the most on top of the situations that they see, ultimately it's going to mean whoever can do the most preparation, Paul, because dynamic weather's a great thing, but if you don't know exactly what the weather's going to be, you probably need to prepare a couple of different setups to get ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. My most exciting part about the whole feature is none of that. It's the fact that we're going to get a weather radar, so I can do my best weatherman impression in the middle of a broadcast. I mean, if we get me on a green screen and we get the ability to show the weather radar, oh my goodness, I can have so much fun with that.
I'm just saying that 2022, iRacing Daytona 24, we did get Kevin Ellis Jr. to be a weatherman, Paul. So there is precedent. If you're volunteering...
I mean, I've got a green screen, you know.
If you're volunteering, well, where there's a will, there's a way, is what they say. And there's a will here in the commentary booth to see that, at least from my perspective. Will Chadwick trying to go the long way around on Max Esterson, and that's an interesting place to be. The Mercedes on the inside, which did get that power reduction in the BOP, let's not forget, which maybe is hindering it just a little bit as they run through the rev range, through the gears and into that chicane. Esterson gets past, Chadwick continues his charge and momentum on forward. I did see a question in the chat posed towards us, Paul. Is it the bus stop? Is it the Le Mans chicane? Which one are we going with?
It's Le Mans chicane. That is what it's officially known as now.
Is it the Parabolica or the Curva Alberetta, though?
It's the Curva Alberetta.
You see, you're very boring
it's officially
here.
Called. Oh no, trust me, I got it wrong on my first ever real world commentary. So at Monza. So
what did Lewis call it that weekend?
I think he called it a mixture of the Parabolica.
I was going to say
Alberetta. Yeah, it caught us all out, I think, on that one.
Lewis, I think, intentionally calls it the Parabolica, at least most of the time in the sim racing world. To me, the only corner names that are firm, there are very few corner names that are firm, and they have to have a history behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, corner names are fair game. Like at the Nordschleife, you're not changing stuff. That is there for a reason. They're usually named for a reason. But for example, the Kink. If someone wants to come up with a better name for that, I'm all ears.
I mean, for me, when they changed that corner name at Monza from the Parabolica, I felt it was the wrong corner to change the name of. Just because it is such a well-known corner, it's, if you say the Parabolica to somebody who's a motorsport fan, they know exactly what corner you're talking about at which track. If you say the Curva Alboreto corner, which corner is that? What track is that on? It doesn't have that same impact. I do agree with recognising Michele Alboreto, though, because he was a fantastic racer in Italian racing, and didn't quite reach the heights in Formula One, but made it so much in the world of sports car racing and things like that, really where he got his name known. But certainly I do agree with respecting him with that, just maybe not that corner.
Well, the problem is there legitimately is not another corner that you can rename. I was just thinking about it. They all have names, so the only other option would have been to call it the Michele Alboreto Straight or something, like after Ascari or whatever.
Yeah.
But none of the other straights have names, and so I do see the issues, like that there are always pros and cons, justifications and logic that sometimes we as a public don't see. What I will just say is I thought the Nordschleife did it perfectly when we lost Sabine Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't take long. They found a section, and let's be honest, they found the best section as well. The start of every single lap at the Nordschleife.
Yeah, you can guarantee that everybody will also see that corner name as well. Pretty much everyone. Some do have a bit of a talent failure going in through through the end of the lap there, or the start of the lap on the tourist laps. But yeah, pretty much everyone sees that corner and sees the name. I mean, I think we can all agree as well. Spa-Francorchamps, can you just pick names and stick with them, please?
I was going to say, we've
really
talked about this with Martin
us.
Haven, haven't we? Corner names are a suggestion at Spa, aren't they? Let's not get into that rant, because then you'll get me talking about corner numbers as well. Because Daytona, case in point, is not great with that. 3 at the front still for LMP3. They are dropping everybody behind right now. Oscar Mangan trying to hold strong, but increasingly 10th by 10th slipping backwards. Luis Nunez unable to make inroads into the lead. Pablo Castro, Frederick Schwartz, Rui Rodriguez, Linus Technow, and Carl Dunlop. That's the rest of the top 10, and they're still only separated by about 30 seconds with just over an hour in the books coming towards that final hour of competition. We know there's one more pit stop expected from LMP3s, one more pit stop expected from GT4s, but Paul, we're still waiting for the touring cars to come down pit lane, such is the capacity of fuel that they carry.
I was about to say we're also waiting for one more pit stop from the TCRs, because there is only one pit stop here, and it's all about when you take that pit stop as well. As I was saying, if you're in a gaggle of cars, you want to stick with them as long as possible if they're all sort of matching their pace. If you're stuck behind some cars, maybe take a pit stop a lap earlier or two just to get yourself that clear of them. It can have an effect that way as well. So strategy isn't just a case of what's planned beforehand, it's also what's worked out during the race as well.
And who could be the quickest to figure that out, and that's where some of those iRacing auto fuel systems or strategists really do pay dividends. Very correct comment in the iRacing Esports Network chat, by the way. There are 2 Lesmos. We could have renamed one of them, Paul.
No, but they've always been known as the Lesmos.
You said it, not me, but I agree with you.
But then again, it was always known as the Parabolica, so
right. It was always known as the bus stop until it wasn't anymore. I guess that tends to be how it goes. LMP3 leaders back past touring cars again, by the way. The relentlessness of traffic, something that you do have to get used to in an endurance race, and something that I'm sure Le Boudelet, who's got plenty of experience in those sprint races, is getting accustomed to right now and dealing with it quite well. now that he's also been passed, Paul, to the point where we were wondering what was going through his mind, he's in a great spot, saving fuel, running in second, and thinking about the window still to come. It was only about a 5-second difference, which sounds like a lot, I know. 5 seconds is really not that much, and Nathan Moore was the one that was saving fuel in the first stint of the race.
And look at how Mark Fletcher has been able to just tag on to the back of these drivers as well, with his shorter stop that he had. He was about a second and a half shorter than Le Bouteille himself, so three different little bit of strategies play going on. Now TCR, your race leader, Michael Polacek, has said, my car cannot continue with its fuel.
And so he ran, what was it, 42 full laps effectively in the lead of the race. The worst part of all of this is, for the most part, there's one other touring car that's just dived down onto pit lane. That is, I believe, Matthias Penttila.
Yep.
Everyone else still out there on track. He's going to have no drafting help as he rolls back out up to speed.
And this is where it can come back to bite you now, is that sort of gap in the field coming out. Where do you come out? Do you get yourself some traffic to help you out? I mean, where he's coming out right now, I'm looking at my track map. He is coming out in the biggest clear air I think we've seen since the start of this race.
I mean, you've got a couple of the GT4 leaders coming around right now, but I mean, let's be real, even with the extended distance they have to go before they hit those new limiter lines at Daytona, which were added a couple of years ago to accommodate the RFID tracking system that Michelin uses for the tires across of all of the IMSA sanctioned series. Yeah, I mean, what more can you say other than look everywhere around, there's not a soul in sight.
Yeah, that's a very lonely place for Michael to be right now, but it's when do those other leaders come onto pit road for TCR? That's going to be the next question now. Aaron Vasquez, Kira Wolf, are they going to come down at the same time, both in Hondas? Remember that Honda, 2% less fuel capacity in that fuel cell. Are they going to go another lap here? So the Honda proving very frugal.
Not bad as well, given that they effectively see some of the other drivers like Jack Sedgwick roll down to pit lane, and so maybe a little bit of that car involved. This is a really intriguing camera angle as we ride with Kira Wolf. Look how wide Aaron Vasquez was to allow those prototype cars to get on through, and now on the other side, up the inside they go into the International Horseshoe. When you're in a slower class, Paul, I've got to ask you as the touring car driver in particular, knowing that you are a front-wheel drive machine, and if you see someone having a lunge up the inside, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, why couldn't you have waited until corner exit? You're quicker off of the corner. Do you know what a lot of people don't realise as well? Is that these touring cars, with them being front-wheel drive, they understeer on corner exits, so you're going to run wide, and then you get somebody in an LMP3 deciding to go around the outside and wondering why you've then understeered into them. It's like, hello, nip in on the corner exit, and you get the better run out of the corner on the inside. Sorry, you've
Paul Smith
with something there.
Is the rant over?
Well, TCRs are on pit road, so other TCRs are in.
Well, I think the thing when it comes to touring cars is you have to adapt to the way they drive, and that's where we talk in other series, especially in the main Daytona 24, about how important it is to sometimes have driven the other cars, to understand how they go through the corner, so you know the most optimum ways to pass them. No more is that true, in my opinion, than in these touring cars because of how different they are. But that's also why, unfortunately, most people don't end up doing the hard work, the needful work, to get that stuff done. So Michael Polacek is still in the net lead of the race of those that have pitted. Jack Sedgwick, Brandon Hawkin have come out behind and only about 3 seconds away. Drivers up front finally making their way down to the lane, and a couple of drivers have their box almost instantly. Aaron Vasquez hits his marks.
Michael Polacek, by the way, was about 62 seconds behind them. That is quite the angle to be on pit road in that Elantra, the Sebelt Elantra. So, yeah, not the best there for Roberto Ferrari, but certainly got caught out by very last minute. The pit lollipop man being right there going, hello, yeah, I'm right at this end of the pit lane. This pit lane does catch you out if you've not noticed where your pit box is. Here's Polacek then out of the Le Mans chicane. And here's the drivers of Wolf and Vasquez out of pit road.
It's going to be a bit of a drag race between the two of them, but as Fabian Siegmann stays out an additional lap, so does Gaio Valero and Felipe Barreto. Here comes Polacek with the speed built up through the banking. Already, though, we're about to see those two drivers of Wolf and Vasquez be released from the limiter, and after what was a almost 6 seconds short of pit stop, no surprise to see them come out in front. Polacek going to be directly behind Roberto Ferrari. His gap to the leaders about 5 and a bit seconds. The undercut, the fuel saving, well, it's worked a treat.
Polacek as well, getting caught up with your leading drivers in LMP3 coming through them as well. So yeah, really catching him out with those drivers coming through, slowing him down and all of that. So yeah, Polacek, it's just not worked out, has he? He's in 6th at the moment, net 4th with the net 3rd, should I say, with the drivers due a pit stop. Nicholas Laubish onto pit road for 2nd pit stop now, so GT4 is starting to feel the need to make their final stops.
I think unfortunately for Nicholas, that was not a optional trip down to the pit lane.
Oh no, it wasn't.
If you're picking up what I'm putting down, let's go ahead and try and pick up the replay of that. And oh, there's contact with one of the PGZ entries, so Pablo's Discord goes wild as he tries to then rejoin. Oh, that's an uncomfortable place to be.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the absolute worst, because you've no room there to be able to spin it round. And you can see, look, the GT4 is better at the lower speed corners than the LMP3s, and he's got caught out by that, hasn't he?
I mean, you ride on board and you can just see that contact, not much that Laubish could do after he went deep and just managed to close that margin. We talked so much at the start of this one about the low downforce spec of these LMP3s, how much they're struggling. Case in point example right there.
So, what can the leaders do here, by the way? Because Mark Fletcher's just dropped a little... Oh no, I say he's dropped that a little bit far back. My eyes deceive me. He's right there with them. Oscar Mangan, it's been a surprise to see him not up there with them, although he is now starting to match Thomas Laboute's lap times again. But yeah, the leaders have just been pulling away ever so slightly over Mangan. I think that incident just affected him enough that it put him out of a potential race win here.
Well, I think what's also happened is Mangan had broken away just before that moment, and so fuel mileage and fuel strategy had potentially gone out the window, and maybe we're seeing a little bit more representative pace through the field. Did see a correct correction in the chat as well. I think I mentioned earlier that some drivers had taken tires and others had not. Well, I think I'd flipped that around. Nathan Moore had not taken tires. Laboudele, Mark Fletcher, and I believe Oscar Mangan all had taken the tires on their pit stop calls. And so that's something I'll be quite curious to see when we get to maybe 45 minutes or so to go, how that strategy is going to end up faring out. Fabian Siegmann is going to dive down to pit lane from the lead of the touring car category, will become the final driver to do so, and he's going to slot his way in towards the top 10 or so, with the pit stop window now complete for the touring cars. It's just between Vasquez and Kira Wolf for the time being, Paul, because the train that has, well, for most of this race, seen all the cars be in the draft, suddenly has been broken up.
Polacek has a slowdown penalty after the Le Mans chicane as well, so it goes from bad to worse for Michael. After leading in that Obsidian racing car for so long, you're absolutely right. The fuel saving that Kira Wolf and Aaron Vasquez were able to make behind Michael is really, and he just can't get rid of it. Now it's gone. It's finally gone. He can get back up to speed, but not before losing another place.
Lines that you run through that corner are going to be very, very important. Oh, Fabian Siegmann's come out directly in this battle for the lead. I didn't think it would be this close, but short pit stop, of course, for him. And now, directly behind Kira Wolf and Aaron Vasquez, it's two of the Honda Civic Type Rs. It's one of the Hyundai Velosters, with just 3.5 seconds back to Gaio Valero in the first of the Elantras as they run right now. still anyone's game as they run their way through here. That BOP adjustment that we of course saw, a percentage of power taken away from the Audi, a percentage, or rather half a percentage of power, percentage of fuel taken away from the Honda Civic. It's very much equalized the cars quite nicely, Paul, I'd have to say.
From what I could see, by the way, Siegmund did not take any tyres. So no tyres taken for that Veloster. But yeah, we're seeing... I think that Honda would have just been that little bit overpowered in terms of the strategy if it hadn't had that 2% of fuel tank taken away from it. I mean, we're seeing just how they were able to go that bit longer than Polacek by a few laps. We are talking, what, 2 laps longer? But Siegmund in that Veloster has been, well, the best of them all, being able to look after the fuel. Jack Sedgwick's 7th placed is the best place of the Audis as well, so the Audis just not quite had the pace here today around this venue. It wasn't really expected to be the one to compete, but speaking of competing, the front 3, well, they're still at it, and we're just sat here patiently waiting another, 10 minutes or so before they head on to pit road?
There has been a change at the front. Laboudelet's taken it back over from Nathan Moore, so they are starting to switch back around. Maybe the fuel saving has been accomplished from that 24 BS competition entered car. Going to be curious to see how it all plays out. Of course, this is not the first race for WSR Esports Butt Kicker, but it's the first of the special events for them under their new banner. A lot of those drivers, of course, spent the last handful of years competing for Pure Sims and Ash Sudden. Going to be exciting and curious to see, Paul, how they go over this next calendar year. A good group of drivers looking to try and push on to the next level.
Well, they do have a good group of drivers indeed. So, yeah, they be intriguing to see how they compete. Of course, David Baker in the TCR class still representing the Pure Sims outfit. So it's not been a how should we say? It's not been a completely all singing, all dancing, nice hugs in terms of how the teams came about to be. But certainly it's going to be intriguing how World Sim Racing as an outfit do get on with this new esports outfit. And I mean, we've seen them in their leagues on RaceSpot TV, the leagues that they run as well, World Sim Racing. Can they take that sort of organisation now fully, properly into a serious contention at the top of sim racing?
So, with Moore now sitting behind after not taking tyres in the previous stint, you have to wonder how his Michelin tyres are feeling right now. Michelin tyres that, by the way, especially here at Daytona, go through challenges that they don't really face at any other race of the season, given the cold temperatures that the race often has to go through. Now, these LMP3 cars won't be running the Rolex 24 this year, so no low-spec Michelin, low-temperature spec Michelin tires maybe to worry about, but we'll still see them competing in the VP Sports Car Championship and through other various routes in the IMSA sanctioning ladder, so we're quite curious to see how all the drivers get on. I mentioned earlier there's a ladder for the prototypes now in iRacing. You go from LMP3 to LMP2 up to the GTPs. You could even start with the Radicals if you wanted to. That ladder now, Paul, I feel like in real sports car racing exists as well. There has always been the ladder to go as a Pro-Am driver to LMP3s to LMP2s, but never necessarily was there the chance to go and race at Le Mans in the top level of the prototype class. IMSA had the DPIs that had some privateer entries, yes, but not like we're seeing customer private entries in the hypercar class, in the LMDH class. Very exciting news coming out in the last couple of days, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues to evolve in the future.
Yeah, certainly. It's great to see those people given opportunities and to be able to compete at the very top level. I mean, it's not unusual in terms of the history of motorsport to have customer teams being taken on cars at the top level. I mean, even in Formula One, you literally had people buying cars off of manufacturers, off of Lotus, off of Ferrari, off of all the different teams. So you had that back in the history of motorsport, even in endurance racing as well, but certainly at this highest level at Le Mans with the LMDHs, it's going to be intriguing to see how that works. Speaking of intriguing, by the way, Arjuna, Luis Nunez has been onto pit road. That's going to be tight, I think, for fuel, in my opinion.
It's a bit early, but 30-odd laps, it's not necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Here comes Mark Fletcher. He's 28 laps into his run. Let's not forget that he had a rather short pit stop last time by as well. So as he makes his way down onto the lane, would not be shocked to see a slightly longer pit stop from him this time by in the swings and roundabouts that are the strategy battles. Also, I just want to... It's popped into my mind out of absolutely nowhere. But one thing that I've always kind of wondered about is, you know, we talk about swings and roundabouts of traffic. Don't think that's necessarily so true at a track like Daytona because, for example, let's say that you're running in a pack and you pass a gaggle of cars. There's definitely a lockup of the right front tire for Le Boutele's BS competition number 24. If you get past a bunch of cars on the banking and then the car behind you doesn't, there's no guarantee that's going to then be equalized. Anyway, that's just a point that's really not that important, but random stuff that pops into my mind. To finish the point that we were having with top-level prototypes and customers, just give a shout-out to the ultimate customer, to the ultimate sim racer as well, let's be honest. The dream of all sim racers would be to be Ben Keating, and Ben Keating is going to be racing in the JDC Miller Porsche GTP entry in the iRacing, the Rolex Daytona 24 even, and that's going to be really exciting. He will be the first ever bronze driver to race an LMDH car. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be wild. So now that Mark Fletcher's descended onto pit lane, who's following? Nathan Moore comes in, and quite interestingly as well, given he had a long pit stop last time around. Let's see how this battle on strategy will all end up faring out. For Mark Fletcher, it was a 36.6 second stop, I can confirm. And so now, as we watch the WSR esports machine hit its marks, Nathan Moore once again is going to sit there and not go up on those air jacks. The fuel being loaded in. Still waiting for him to get that message. You can see behind, that's Pablo Castro in and up on the jacks almost instantly. Mark Fletcher is using that yellow line on the apron to try and wrap his way around NASCAR's turn 3 and 4. Here goes Nathan Moore away. It's a 29-second pit stop. It's 6 seconds quicker than what Mark Fletcher was able to do in pit lane. It's going to be a gap that the WSR Esports butt kicker car will enjoy as it finally is able to release itself from the limiter. But Paul, what a gamble. 7 seconds shorter on the pit stop time.
Wow. I mean, we saw it was Nathan, wasn't it, who didn't take tyres at the pit stop, first pit stop as well. So how's this going to work out for him in terms of strategy, in terms of fuel, in terms of making it to the end? My goodness, this is going to be dramatic to watch, and I'm looking forward to how this one works out. But yeah, definitely those different tyre and fuel strategies come into play as Thomas Le Boutele now heads onto pit road. So we are well and truly in that pit stop cycle. And
so the final gambit, at least at the front, Oscar Mangan falls into line as well and trundles into the lane. So there comes the BS competition zebra. I can only imagine what Florian, the team manager, is thinking. We were having that conversation slightly earlier. It's not a new team member, but it's a new charge taking to iRacing. As up on the jacks, Le Boutele is going to take tyres once again.
Interesting strategy now. Is that just going to be right sides only, perhaps? Or are they going full set of tyres? Because that would take a little while just to bring back up into temperature and pressure. Here comes Nathan Moore around that final NASCAR turns. And still, they're on pit road. This is going to be Moore to the lead here.
So Labudele splits the difference between the pit stop times, so Moore maybe did end up saving a decent amount of fuel, even with the time that he spent up towards the front. He almost three-wheeled it through the corner as the left front pops into the air as it was squatted down under power. But back onto track, still waiting for Carl Dunlop to come down pit lane. Kevin Bellens is that LMP3 car directly behind Labudele. Mark Fletcher, another 3.5 seconds back. Effectively, it's 3.5 seconds between each of those on the net podium spots.
Yeah, so how does this all pan out? How do we see this one going? I mean, I'd love to see what people think in the chat as well as to how they see those different strategies playing out here. It's going to be an exciting end to this race, whatever it is, that is for sure. Your GT4s as well as started to make pit stops as well, because Damon Woods is now onto pit road.
And he did not get joined, intriguingly, by his teammate Lucas Muller. Yes, I know different liveries, but under the Door Esports stable for the two of them. And so as Damon Woods, 25 seconds and counting, still stationary in the pit stop. We mentioned it earlier, it's a benefit to come out of pit lane with help, with some drafting assistance, and so Muller clearly feels like right now the benefit for him to stay out there and go a little bit longer. Will Chadwick's charge continues. We mentioned that the long pit stop for him is going to mean a shorter pit stop at the end. Maybe no tire is going to be able to be taken for him, but Damon Woods only spent 42 seconds in pit stop in the pit lane this most recent time around. Will Chadwick still has some work to do to try and leapfrog his way back to the front.
Yeah, he's got to get past some people, and well, if ever there was somebody who is hard to get past and will past is Sven Hasse, and in fact, Will's deciding that the better action is for him to bump draft Sven. He knows Sven's got pace. That is for sure, so he knows he doesn't need to worry too much about working his way past Sven, and in fact could maybe do a little bit of fuel saving working with Sven here, and to help him have an even shorter final pit stop to try and make this strategy of absolutely brimming the tank at the first pit stop, try and make that work for him.
Lucas Muller's into the lane as well. Corentin Gunes stays out there. Sven Hasse, Will Chadwick also were going to stay out there for at least a couple of additional laps. Let's not forget they did have the slightly longer pit stops though. That's going to see them rumble around. The BMW got no major adjustments in the BOP other than the fuel reduction that it received. The Porsche got a slight additional hit to the fuel as compared to that. So as Lucas Muller's Door Esports car gets a full service, you can see he's up on the jacks because they can do tires and fuel at the same time. Just waiting to see now if he fares out in front of Damon Woods, alongside Damon Woods, behind his teammate in those Falcon colors. And let's be honest, there's many beautiful liveries in the field here today. There's not many more beautiful liveries in the world of motorsports than those Falcon Tires colors.
They're iconic, aren't they? I think is what I would say about them. Instantly recognisable as a livery is that Falcon Tires livery. So and it suits a GT car, I feel. As out of pit road goes that Door Esports GT4 Porsche 718 Cayman, and onto the International Horseshoe, and comes out ahead of Damon Woods.
That is also a 3-second advantage, so it's not a small gap between these two drivers. See if it continues to run like this. Big lockup from Luis Nunez as he battles now with Pablo Castro. This is for 7th position. Crazy to think that Luis Nunez at one point was a contender for the race victory, now struggling to keep a spot in the top 5. I've seen some comments in the RaceSpot TV chat concerned about some of these lockups that we're seeing from the drivers. Now, some of that will be locking up, maybe not to the extent that we're seeing on our screens, but I do think it probably stands to reason that the less locking that you see, the more tire conservation that you're seeing. Luis Nunez not so worried about the state of the right front, it would seem.
Yeah, it's on the sort of corner exit stuff where we're seeing it. I think that's just maybe just a little bit of something which we're not getting the full, minute, finite details as spectators in the server. But the stuff going into the corner, yeah, I think that's definitely locking up, and Nunez was giving it a big old lock going into the Western Horseshoe.
On board with the number 32 machine as closing up into the chicane they will go. I'm just looking at some of these iRatings right now and thinking that if this is the Roar before, and the lowest iRating in the field is going on, what, 6,500 iRating, what's the Rolex 24 going to be like for us, Paul, in terms of iRatings that we're going to see in top split? I would not be shocked, given that there are now more than 30 drivers with more than 10,000 iRating. If the strength of fields work out at, I'm trying to guesstimate right now, 8,000, 9,000?
Well, the strength of field here in this race is 7607. That's across all the classes. The biggest strength of field in terms of classes. Oh no! Is that one of your race leaders in TCR?
No, it was Miguel Freitas, which I was going to say fortunately, but maybe not fortunately for him.
The Team Iberian, my former teammate, Miguel Freitas, getting caught up innocently in all of that. The GT4s, by the way, 8836 is the strength of field here in GT4s. There was just over 1,500 people registered for this race, and if ever... yeah, I don't know about that one. How fortunate was Nunes in all of that?
I mean...
So he's made the initial contact as Nunes, and then Freitas has... I wonder if he's maybe broken the rear suspension.
I was going to say that
the
right rear did look a little bit suspect as soon as that contact happened. So, that's one of those LMP3 moments. We got at least one of them here today.
Well, we were waiting, weren't we? Kevin Bellens is onto pit road now, so that was 32 laps for Bellens in the LMP3s. So, the TCRs are still going on, and Fabian Siegmann, we didn't really discuss at all, did we, Fabian? All the way through the opening portion of the race. Just quietly went about the business, did that fuel saving, and has found themselves into being an ideal opportunity right now.
It's quite curious as well that Kira Wolf isn't trying to make the moves just yet with 35 minutes to run. No expectations of pit stops, of course, after this. You might have anticipated a little bit more angst and willingness to move on forward, but at least not yet. Corentin Gunes has just come out of pit lane for what will be his final time down on the lane. He's 3.5 seconds off of Lucas Muller, directly behind Damon Woods. And now that Will Chadwick has gotten in front of Sven Haase, they were about, this pack that we're watching right now, was about 10 seconds behind Gunes before he came into the pit lane. I don't think, no matter how you do the math here, I don't think there's a situation where Will Chadwick is close to the race leader after his next time down pit lane.
Yeah, it's just not panning out, is it? Sven's now giving him the bump draft back after Will was helping him out throughout the last few laps. So yeah, the two of them working together to try and push themselves forward in this one. It seems so strange that you're competing against each other and yet you're trying to help each other to work together towards the front.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? And sometimes you need to find friends, which is where, at this level of racing, the little gripes that you have about other drivers and slight foibles that you have with them in other races, put them aside and work with them to get the result that you need. It is as simple as that. Although having said that, for Oscar Mangan and Mark Fletcher, I don't think there's necessarily too much that they can do to try and close back up to Nathan Moore, who is 9 seconds clear at the front right now. Has not taken tires today, short pit stop at the end as well. That's a strategy call that I don't think any of us would have seen coming, but Nathan Moore's done his testing and figured out what works for him.
And Moore as well as keeping that pace of 40.3 last lap. As we've got another spin. Is that Nunes again?
It is indeed.
I think it is.
Now, was that by himself or was that helping hand?
Was he pushed or was he shut? Or did he fall? You know, that's the question in all of this. And he's locking up and he's lost it again! Oh, he's wound up. And it's all by himself, is that first one. Carried too much speed, and that's it. He's out the race.
I don't think...
He's decided to park it.
Something, that car is all right. Something seems a little bit wrong with the car into that corner. here you go. I'm as a commentator making the racing driver excuses for the racing driver. GT4 is not coming into pit lane. Nathan Moore's going to take back over the lead now that Carl Dunlop's in the lane for the final time today. But almost into those final 30 minutes, we've been talking about grandstand finishes being set up. Not maybe going to be the case in the LMP3 class, might still be the case in the GT4 class. Definitely going to be the case, I think, for the touring cars. And like you said, we haven't talked much about Fabian Siegmann. The other thing that we haven't talked about, Paul, is the fact that there's 2 Honda Civics running 1 and 2, and he's in the Veloster tucked in behind.
Yeah, I did mention how that Veloster isn't necessarily the most aerodynamically efficient when you compare it to the Elantra. The Elantra, with it being a proper, not a tailgate, but a proper boot, as we'd call in the UK, or a trunk in the States. It has a better aerodynamic flow compared to a hatchback car with a tailgate, and well, these Hondas have certainly proved themselves good at the front of the TCR field, but this Veloster, it's not giving up without a fight, and certainly Fabian has done a really good job in 3rd place in class.
So there used to be a time when we had just the one TCR in iRacing, then we added 2 more, then we added 1 more after that. So if you had asked someone when the Audi had first been released that, wait, you'll get not 1 but 2 Hyundais, they would have said, give me him, I'll be very happy. Crazy thing about Hyundai is they've got another TCR car they could add as well, and every single one of their touring cars is successful, Paul, around the world, to the point where, in some ways, some of their TCR cars were created because their other TCR cars were getting bopped to high heavens, and they said, the only way for us to get back on a clean slate is to make a new car again.
Yeah, it was a case of, oh, we've got the Veloster, that's doing really well. Oh, that's getting BOP'd. Right, we'll have the Elantra. Oh, that's getting BOP'd as well. Well, we've got the i20N as well. So, they've got just cars coming left, right, and centre that they can run. But yeah, the running costs of a TCR are a surprise. It's the same as a Porsche 992 Cup car. Is the actual running costs of a TCR car.
Is it really?
You're shocked by that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something I found out in the paddock at Monza. And that's why you may be seeing in some endurance series like the 24-hour series and also the Nürburgring endurance series, the NLS and things like that, you're seeing actually more 992s and less TCRs because, well, if I'm going to be spending that level of money, I want a Porsche.
Should we talk about GT3 running costs and scare everyone that's watching?
Oh, let's not.
That's not.
I mean, when you're talking $1 million just for a car, just to buy the thing.
Yeah. Well, that's the new running cost. That's GT3s were created, right, as a way to bring down the costs of manufacturer-based racing, but to still make it intriguing and appetizing for those manufacturers. As the years went on, the cars have been so specialized and continued to be developed to the point where they no longer so closely resemble the production counterparts that they were based on. And so that's where GT4 was born, to say, right, let's make it even more close to the production-based counterparts. And Will Chadwick said this many a time to me in private, and I'm sure he says it in public as well, as Sven Haase comes down to pit lane in that GT4 class. He prefers the GT4s to the GT3s as a driver because it takes more from him to be fast.
Yes, it's a bit more of a momentum car, isn't it, rather than a GT3 car. You've still got the traction control and the ABS there to help you out, to make it more friendly to people who are newer to GT style driving. But you've not quite got the power there compared to GT3. You've not got the aerodynamics there as well compared to GT3, as Haase is 30.2 seconds on the box, and will come out now. But yeah, GT4s can be a bit more fun to drive and a bit more fun to race, I would say, as well.
These are all subjective opinions at the end of the day. I've always found it interesting to where we talk about what's fun to race. We said at the start, iRacing special events are about embracing everything that makes motorsport great, and you'll find something fun no matter where you go. So Sven Haase emerges in front of Gunes and Woods, who have just swapped around of their own accord, I do believe. 2.5 seconds back from Lucas Muller. Is Will Chadwick's strategy maybe looking a little less crazy than I thought it was? Although 2.5 seconds is still 2.5 seconds.
I mean, around here, he's not in a slipstream. You know, that's the thing. You've got to be within that sort of second and a half, haven't you, to be able to make that work, really. Here's Will. Do we see him onto pit road, or is he staying out once again? And the answer is going to be he's staying out yet again. Getting that full fuel tank is really going to mean a really short final pit stop here for him. So he's going to have that less time down pit road, but as you said, he won the race last year by doing the opposite to what he's doing this year. Has he seen something this year? Because, of course, iRacing has changed a little bit since last year. Has he seen something there this year compared to last year?
Let's not forget as well that when it comes to this time that Will's spending out on track, last time by he was actually almost half a second quicker than what Lucas Muller did the previous time by. We'll get a more representative benchmark at the line as the Door Esports Porsche breaks the timing beam. Muller sees a checkered flag just waiting now, 26 minutes away. 0.7 of a second lost there. That might be the difference between a heavy car laden with fuel and a light car waiting to be topped off to get to the end. Will Chadwick maybe closing that buffer in those small margins that he needs. Sven Haase under pressure from Corentin Gunes and Damon Woods. The lap times from Corentin Gunes actually slightly quicker than Lucas Muller lap on lap on lap, and so he's been able to bring that gap down by himself by about half a second. 25 minutes to go, narrow margins. Damon Woods, Corentin Gunes, Sven Haase, they can't afford to fight right now.
No, they certainly cannot. They need to get... And again, it's really counterintuitive. You don't want to fight each other, but at the same time, you are competing against them for those positions and to try and win the race. It is really strange, but the last thing you can do is start tripping over each other in trying to make those moves, as Will Chadwick does pit now. So he managed 31 laps on that full tank. But if you start fighting each other and tripping up over each other, you just hand it on a plate to the others that you're trying to actually catch and overtake.
So the Hymo setup car not up on the jacks. There's no need for tires. Can he get enough fuel in that car in less than the time it would take for him to put 4 tires on, and doesn't feel it's worth changing the balance of the car? It was, for Lucas Muller, 40.6 seconds stationary. For Sven Haase, the benchmark to compare against, it was a 30-second pit stop. 27.6 seconds means for Will Chadwick, if it's 3 seconds between Haase and Muller, he's right in that buffer zone. It's a long wait right now, being forced to sit on the limiter, run your way through turn 1, and watching on your outside to see if the car that you're battling on pit exit is going to be there. Chadwick gets to the line though, releases himself from the limiter, and he's 2.5 seconds in front with 24 minutes left to go.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be intriguing. Has this actually worked for Will? Has he? Because again, you know, you can be looking at things like traffic, how that can affect things, and having to work through things with groups and gaggles of cars. It's all how it balances out throughout a race, and certainly this has been a fascinating race to watch and to call here. But yeah, 2.5 seconds between Will Chadwick and Lucas Muller. This one's not over yet, though, I don't think. I think there's still plenty to happen in this one.
I think I need to eat my hat. Maybe not your hat, Paul. That might be a bit difficult to go down, but goodness, I will eat some humble pie. I thought the strategy wouldn't work, and Will Chadwick has made it work. It's, like you say, not done by any means. There's still a ways to go, but That's a gap that's going to take some closing, and the gap behind the one that had been closing before. We'll keep an eye on GT4s. We'll keep an eye on touring cars too, because Vasquez, Wolf, and Siegman still find themselves 3 for the front of touring cars. But Nathan Moore, 9 seconds clear at the top of the prototype class, is on course, it would seem, for a victory, as Mangan, Fletcher, and Leboudelet are all involved in the squabble for the final 2 steps of the podium.
Yeah, Moore's got one foot on that top step of the podium. The thing is, it's how the tyres last out for the rest of this race. I think he should be fine. It's what Mangan, what Fletcher, and what Leboudelet do here now. The last laps, here we go, across the line, 40.8 for Mangan. That's a good lap, is that, actually. 40.799 for Fletcher, 40.1 for Leboudelet. That double draft is really helping Thomas at the back of this gaggle. Well, the problem is now it's getting past. Oh, show of the nose there. And we have got drama as well in the new TCR class, because I can see, there you go, the driver who was in 3rd place, Fabian Siegman, is dropping down the order.
They were keeping each other very, very close, and it's come wrong as he had gone for 2nd as well. So was trying to get past Kiro Wolf, and then as they made contact on the exit, the Hyundai just almost in slow motion in relation to the Honda trying to go around the outside. Unfortunate moment there, and it has allowed Vasquez a small little buffer. Here's a look from up above as we take a look at the slow-mo.
It's that Hyundai is understeering into it because there's tighter line, having to brake that little bit harder, and it's just understeering into Kira Wolf here. We'll get a good look at it from on board. On the brakes, they're both on the brakes. It's not like one's just driven the other one off the track. It is just an unfortunate incident, is that I do feel.
Race control post-race, let's not forget here in these iRacing special events with how the protest system works. Nimcross may be a little bit busy after this one. Mark Fletcher gets passed by Leboudelet, who immediately Fletcher back into line behind that BS competition car. They're about to pass Will Chadwick, who in the first 2 laps that he's been on track has already grown his buffer by an additional 1.5 seconds. Chadwick is on a roll and building that gap, and with Muller going to be increasingly under pressure in the GT4 battle for 2nd, you've got to think Chadwick's just hoping that Gunes, Woods and Haase will be his best friend.
Yeah, he needs Muller to be worried about those drivers behind than him in front. But Woods, I mean, Damon Woods led a lot of this GT4 class race along with Will Chadwick, but Guinness and Muller, let's not count them out. Those two, they can certainly give themselves a great opportunity if they can work together and push forward. But Guinness needs to get to Muller to be able to help push him forward towards Will Chadwick, and with under 20 minutes to go here, time is now starting to run out for these drivers. We're looking at about, 11 laps or so to go in this race? Well, for the TCRs, definitely.
And it will all depend exactly how many laps based on the overall leader and these cars' relation to that leader as well. So I'm always
12 laps.
I'm hesitant to do that math earlier than like 10 minutes to go, if I'm being totally honest. So I'll let Paul Smith fall on that sword if things go wrong. Strategy, though, at racecraft in a situation like this. Damon Woods, Lucas Muller, teammates could work together. Corentin Gunes, Sven Haase. Could they align with one another, recognize that those two teammates will work together? They could bump draft their way potentially in tandem. Well, these are some of the things that they're all trying to figure out now, but it only matters who is leading coming to the line.
Yeah, once you see that piece of cloth with black and white squares on it, that's when it matters the most. And, these three almost becoming a quartet now, because Muller has been caught by Guinness. So what can Corentin do here? What can Damon Woods do here as well? You see those pit stops, stints. Woods, the earliest of them all, to head onto pit road in this little gaggle of cars. Yeah, certainly, it's the dirt esports need to work together, but the others will be cognizant of that fact as well, that well, they're going to be working together as a team to try and get the best result over me for their team. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on right now.
Are you feeling tense right now? If you're not, well, let us know who you think's going to win this race in all three of the classes, because, well, two of them I think you could feel somewhat confident about your picks. Aaron Vasquez, Kira Wolf, that's still wide up and open for discussion. That's a almost look from Damon Woods, as Lucas Muller now has the rear view mirror filled with the sight of not one, not two, but three GT4 machines queued up behind. That gap to Will Chadwick's grown to 4 seconds, and it will only continue to rise. Magnan up the inside, Laboudelet trying to search for the second place around the outside, runs out of ground, runs out of room, and now as Mark Fletcher puts the pressure back on, loses ground once more. For these drivers who have shown plenty of locking up, Paul, we talked about it, but not sure how much of that's actually impacting the drivers. But some of them have probably been a little bit more cautious about the tyre life than others.
Certainly, I would imagine Nathan Moore at the front has definitely been sort of looking after those tyres and making sure that can make that work to the end of this race. Some have been a bit more exuberant with their treatment of their tyres. Here we go, looking at a replay through the Le Mans chicane, and oh dear, oh my goodness, that's a huge wreck.
You were talking about exuberance. That's an exuberant wreck, maybe, if you want to try and describe it that way. So the first LMP3 car is the one that initially gets the tank slapper, and then as Frederick Schwartz comes around, not often that you see a prototype upside down and sliding down the banking, but there's a first for everything, as it rights itself as well. 10 out of 10 on that.
Yeah, maybe not so good on the actual flips, but stuck the landing. Well done.
Not bad at all. Laboudelet, again, the long way around on Magnan, and despite the fact that he went deep a lap ago, he's already made that ground back up. They've got touring car traffic to navigate through as well. Will they be sandwiched 3 wide? No, they won't. Magnan holds on for now.
Had to back off because of Brad Newman getting in the way there, so that the outside line was taken away. But what that's doing is giving the outside line into the international horseshoe. That's not a traditional move, is that one? And well, it didn't work out this time, but you feel with 15 minutes to go in this race, you can feel that little bit of desperation coming in now from Thomas Laboudelet, from his driving, wanting to move forward in front of Oscar Mangan.
Is this where experience in iRacing will play dividends as well? Will Mangan and Fletcher be able to hold on? Frederick Schwartz, by the way, got tangled up with Rui Rodriguez. I can tell you that was the other LMP3 car that got mixed up, because he's also in pit lane. Schwartz, I think, will be officially done for the day. This is great battling. I'm loving it. But Nathan Moore's loving it even more. 11 seconds clear at the front. And Paul, let's not forget, an hour into this race, we had 4 cars at the front split by under a second. This goes to show how important strategy will truly be in any sprint endurance race, no matter what it is.
Yeah, certainly. And knowing the strategy, knowing how to play things out, and knowing how that's going to work is certainly going to be one of interest for next week as well, because okay, they're not going to be in these LMP3 cars next week, but you do get a feel of how the track behaves, how the tyre wear happens, how the cars are going to work through traffic. It just gives you those ideas. You asked earlier in the race, why would you do this race if you're not going to be in these cars next week? Well, this is why. It's giving you that racing experience.
And there is no practice that can substitute for this race experience at the end of the day, especially when it comes to traffic management. Karin Zengunez has just gotten in front of Damon Woods, Lucas Muller, Sven Haase at the back of this pack for 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th in the GT4s. I mean, this is tense stuff for all of them, and I'm just very happy. I'm relieved that, knocking on wood as I say this, I know we've got 13 minutes left to go, but in each of the last 2 years, we've had rather big issues on the banking with traffic interactions. We haven't had that so far today. They've kept things relatively clean and green for the most part, although right on cue, just as Arjuna talks about clean and green, someone else has an issue.
Yeah, it's all your fault. I know Lewis doesn't believe in the commentator's curse, but I do. And this is going to be all on his own, just around carrying too much speed into the International Horseshoe and around the go. Meanwhile, you saw in the live pictures that was in the bottom right-hand corner, getting a bit feisty between Mangan and Le Bouteille into the Le Mans chicane, almost rubbing panels side to side going into the braking zone of that chicane.
It does seem as though Mangan's a bit of a sitting duck in a straight line, because look at how Le Bouteille always just continues to close, but then stalls out as he pops out of the draft. They play some side drafting games, NASCAR style, as well as unloading off the banking once again with more touring car traffic in front of them. That's Fabian Siegmann. Le Bouteille so committed to the outside because Mangan's giving him nowhere else to go. But lap after lap after lap, it's not working. Le Bouteille is going to have to try and find another way through.
Is Mark Fletcher just sat there thinking, do you know what, boys? You carry on scrapping, and when you eventually wipe each other out, I'll take that second place. Yeah, sounds like a good plan. And that's what it looks like is happening here for Mark Fletcher. He's just sat there enjoying what's happening in front.
The sun as well just continues to move around, not necessarily something that we've talked about too much today as we've run in towards the late afternoon, early evening in Sunshine State. Plenty of cover for us, but as Gaio Valero sees Mark Fletcher getting a little bit sideways and having to get out of the power as they run back onto the banking. One thing that next week we're going to be dealing with in the iRacing Daytona 24 poll is that day-night transition, the run into the night as well. These drivers aren't too worried about the balance of their car shifting in a 2-hour and 24-minute race, but over 24 hours, even in the middle of January, it's going to be something to worry about.
I mean, the track temperature was, 27 degrees Celsius at the starters race. It's down to 22. Well, it's just dipped below 22 now. So that just goes to show that even in this race, 5 degrees of difference in track temperature will have an effect on how the cars handle and how they the balance goes for these cars. Mark Fletcher had issues out there because he's dropped back from these two, as I know we saw him have that little bit of a wiggle, but I didn't think it was that much of a gap that he lost.
Might have been a bit of a slowdown to serve as well, but no matter what the case is there, as Mangan goes very defensive into the International Horseshoe. He was almost in the grass before the braking zone. The zebra again forced the long way around it. I mean, this is amazing racing to watch. They are putting on a real spectacle. They are closing on Nathan Moore as well, not by large leaps by any means, but that gap now down to 8.5 seconds. So it goes to show that it's not like Oscar Mangan is slow here. Le Bouteille is just really piling on the pressure with what will, at this point, I feel confident in saying, about 6 or 7 laps to go.
You're that confident that you say it's either 6 or 7.
Exactly.
It's about 7 laps, I think. 6.5 laps to go for the race leader in this one. Now, the question is Nathan Moore's pace just dropping off because of traffic, or is he having to suddenly look down at his fuel gauge and gone, oh, I need to just make sure of this? I don't know. I think they will have worked it out correctly there on that one. But look at this. Second place in GT4. They're still absolutely together. And all this is just allowing is for Will Chadwick to just eke out that gap at the front.
He is holding station right now. He's doing exactly what he needs to, staying out of trouble and bringing that car towards what would be a potential victory. Almost exactly 2 years to the day as well after that first iRacing Roar victory was on January the 15th that we broadcast that 2022 race, and so crazy to think how much has changed for him, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it with him in the post-race coverage beginning very shortly. So battle for second going on in 2 categories. Of course, in this LMP3 fight as well, still these two the main protagonists, but touring car. It's the battle for the win where Aaron Vasquez and Kira Wolf surely drag race to the line and coming, Paul.
Right now, if I'm Kira Wolf, I do not want to be the lead car. I'm quite happy sitting behind, just staying in that draft. It's when you get to that last lap, you need to get the run out of the Le Mans chicane, and then it's the drag to the finish line. That's what he needs to do, and that's what all Kira needs to do. And to be honest, Kira's that experienced that he knows that's what he needs to do. What Aaron Vasquez needs to do is make it look like he's made a mistake into a braking zone and allow Kira past. Because you do not want to be the leader on the last lap in TCR.
And maybe that's a similar sort of a situation in this fight for second. Let's watch here. Out of the Le Mans chicane, bus stop chicane, no matter what you want to call it, who's going to lead at the line between these two? Although, I don't think this is necessarily the lap to really watch, because it's the first lap in a while that Oscar Mangan's got a huge gap coming back out of NASCAR Turn 4 and on that run to the line. He will definitely be in front at the timing beam, but it's going to matter at the checkered flag. Is that going to be the run that they all get? This, I'll be honest, Le Bouteille had 3-4 laps in a row where he was attacking into turn number 1. This is the first time in a while he's been a little bit too far behind.
Is this a case of Thomas deciding, do you know what, I'm going to just back off just that little bit and wait for an opportunity to come up and to address to Oscar, maybe get a little bit of a breather, and then really pile the pressure on the last few laps of this race, because that time is coming down with 6 3/4 minutes to go. It's certainly going to be an exciting finish between these two cars.
Time flies when you're having fun, is what they say, right? This race has flown on by. That's making me a bit worried that the Daytona 24 is also going to fly past, but knowing that you are going twice around the clock and the production team that we need behind the scenes, I get the sense that next weekend's affair will not be as easy as an encounter for us behind the scenes here at Racebot. I mean, transfixed no matter where I look. At the top of the screen, we've got that fight for second. They've got traffic in front of them as they come up into that chicane. They're going to be side by side. Mangan's going to hold the inside line and hold the position for the time being. On exit, compromise. Pascal Stick sees on his right-hand side both of those LMP3s flying on past. They're playing bumper cars in the fight for second as well. And now finally Lucas Muller's going up high and trying to get on through.
Yeah, where do you look in all of this? I'm glad we've got the two views here, but the Le Bouteille right now on the top of your screen, looking to make that move for LMP P2, and if that was the finish of the race right there, it would have just been by a thousandth of a second Le Bouteille's. That's what he needs to do at the end, although they're still side by side on the exit of 1 and 2.
Still on the inside though, Le Bouteille has the line through the International Horseshoe. You can see those LED panels. Le Bouteille's got the 2 on them. He did get that mark at the line to lead, but on the exit, Mangan now back on the outside. This is great stuff. I mean, the respect that's been shown between these competitors in the LMP3 class. Take a bow. You have displayed what these special events are all meant to be about. Yes, there's some contact on the exit, but it's hard, it's respectful, it's fair racing. Le Bouteille, the zebra, finally up to second.
Yeah, up to second, but for how long? And can Oscar Mangan react to that and be able to put the pressure on? Le Bouteille is trying to make a breakaway here. You can see it just in the behaviour of how he exited that corner onto the banking, and look at some of the traffic that they've got to come up to as well, because they've got that battle for second place in GT4 that they're closing up to as well. That could potentially have some say in how second place pans out in LMP3.
And I get the feeling that they may end up being caught at the GT4s into turn 1. And so now it's Corentin Gunes against the door pair. Sven Haas has been dropped in that BMW. Lucas Muller pushes Damon Woods to second. Muller's going to be now on the outside and hoping he can get his way up to third as well. Gunes on the inside in the Sim RC machine trying to hold on. Long way around, the brave way around as well. And much like we saw with the LMP3 cars, the space being left outside converted back to the inside as the door number 12 holds the inside, tries to use the draft of the teammate in front, and now both teammates on through in the space of 2 corners.
And that's what I said earlier, isn't it? That you had 2 teammates working together and it was to try and get the best result for the team. If you're them from outside of that team, you need to be thinking, oh, what are they up to? Look, they're in more the LMP3, battle battle for second place has caught right up to them now at the worst point of the track.
Mark Fletcher had a bit of a bobble there. Not sure quite what happened. The Boutelet doesn't know where to go. He's pinched in the Door Esports liveried car. So that's Lucas Muller forced to go up high. And now that checks up his momentum. It's going to mean Corentin Gunes is going to get the chance to try and follow. But in the same vein, Le Boutelet now feels the pressure as it's Oscar Mangan this time in the draft. Le Boutelet paints the yellow line.
Oh, this is sensational end to this race. It doesn't feel like it's been just short of 2.5 hours, but my goodness, this has been a fantastic run, and these drivers are giving us one heck of a display. Now, what do you do if you are Thomas Leboutier and Oscar Mangan, because they've been scrapping hard? Leboutilier's made a little bit of a break. Mark Fletcher now coming into this, and the Altitude Esports driver, well, his team, they want to start off 2024 with a bang, and, well, getting onto the podium of the iRacing Roar, that would be a great start to the season for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to last year where Urano started off 1, 2, and 3 in that GT4 class, and it set the tone for the rest of the year. Same thing's going to apply here. Your intentions laid out from the drop of the green flag on the special event calendar races. And I do think, by the way, now that Damon Woods and Lucas Muller are second and third, and maybe with a bit more stability behind them, that they're going to be able to work together to fend off the advances of Corentin Gunes, with Sven Haase losing the draft to those in that podium fight. So, as LMP3 continues to excite for second, third, and fourth position, it's a battle for the lead that I guess we should now, with 90 seconds left on the clock, Paul, turn our full attention towards. It's Kira Wolf hunting down Aaron Vasquez with a potential, I think, for one more lap to go after this one.
Well, the race leader is just coming into the Le Mans chicane right now as Nathan Moore. It's whether he will catch these two and pass them, because that would make it one final lap. So if you are Kira Wolf, you're now psyching yourself up and you're preparing yourself for that move at the end of the lap. But if the leader doesn't quite get to them, well, it would be one more lap, but I think the leader will, you know.
Did you hear how much fuel saving was going on there, Paul?
No, that's Kira not wanting to make a move and to move ahead. Kira wants to be behind, and you can see that Vasquez is holding back. But neither of them want to be leading going on to the banking. They want to be the second car coming out of the Le Mans chicane.
They've already lost a second to their best laps of the race. That is how much time they're trying to lose right now in the game of not being first onto the banking. They're also, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm pretty sure, going to be passed by the race leader. So this will be the final lap of the race for them, because the clock's going to strike 0. Time has expired. There's Nathan Moore, half a straight behind them, as Kira Wolf, Aaron Vasquez, 2.5 miles to go, all on the banking for the most part.
They've got to be careful, because Gaio Valaro has been catching up with them doing those shenanigans as well. But here we go in TCR for the lead.
Into the bus stop. It's not necessarily where the move needs to be. It's about the momentum, the exit, the run out of it, and then the drag race to the line. There's Nathan Moore hanging back, and he's going to wait to slingshot past. He's not going to interrupt here, Paul. Who gets the best run off the corner?
This is great. This is great to watch, and this is a perfect view now onto the power. I just don't think that Kira Wolf is quite close enough to make this one work. There goes Nathan Moore, and your leader of Aaron Vasquez is going to get a great draft.
Maybe waited just a little bit too long, did Kira Wolf. The iRacing Roar sets the stage for the year to come. And what a year we've got to come. Nathan Moore kicks off 2024 with WSR Esports butt kicker on top, winning in the LMP3 class of the iRacing Roar. Aaron Vasquez will grab a well-earned victory over Kira Wolf, outlasting them all in the touring car chaos. But it's Will Chadwick, after 728 days, returns to Daytona, and I can only imagine the emotions going through his mind. What a 2 years it's been. Will Chadwick, the first two-time winner of the iRacing Roar in the GT4 class. Paul, this, like I said, sets the tone. We've had a lot of fun. And I'm now just counting the minutes until we're underway at this very same track for 24 hours of racing for the iRacing Daytona 24, the biggest sim race of them all.
Well, if you wanted something to whet your appetite for next week, this certainly was it. That was a sensational finish to the race, and not just for TCR lead. It's known by some people as totally chaotic racing. Well, you're getting some close finishes further down the order as well. But in that LMP3 class as well, it was pretty darn close between second place as well. So, I mean, a little tip of the hat from me here in the commentary box. That was great to watch.
And ultimately, sometimes you come to Daytona, you expect the chaos, you expect the madness. Well, fortunately for the most part, it was not to be seen today. 48 took to the green. Most of those drivers saw the checkered as well. We can get a look at the provisional race results. I say provisional only because iRacing's new race control system does mean that there's potential post-race penalties that can be added, but I think no such dramas up towards the front. Nathan Moore did save some fuel, I'm pretty sure, at the end, managed the gap. It was only 3.5 seconds to Thomas Leboudelet in the BS competition machine, who made his debut in an iRacing special event and really impressed us. Oscar Mangan for that Core Sim Racing number 19. Altus Esports number 19 down in third position. Mark Fletcher fourth, Carl Dunlop fifth, with Pablo Castro, Kevin Bellins, Linus Technow, Ike Weinberg, and Dario Frattini making up the rest of the top 10. Just one of those drivers not scored on the leading lap. Tobias Siegner also in the finishing cap with Rio Rodriguez, Frederick Schwartz, Luis Nunez, and Augustin Bernier, unfortunately getting tangled up in incidents through the course of the day. Will Chadwick is the second, is his second win in this iRacing Roar Before. 3 seconds clear of Damon Woods and Lucas Muller as the Door Esports pair grab a double podium. They'll be delighted with that one. Corentin Gunes fourth, Sven Haase fifth in the best of the non-Porsches with Pascal Stix in sixth position. Cody Deeth, Gabriel Streitmatter, and then Max Esterton and Steam Ledger. 3 of those cars grid and go entries just inside of the top 10 finishing spots. Rico Wenzel, Justin Ram, final cars on the lead lap. And final finishers in class with Nicholas Laubish, Kieran Harrison, Lauren Benzo, and Alberto Senau, the DNFs on the day. Last but not least, it's over to the touring cars where Aaron Vasquez, a quarter of a second the margin of victory, but ultimately Kira Wolf never really had a chance on the run to the checkered flag. Gaio Valero did close, but not close enough to be able to challenge in the closing stages, while Fabian Siegman will be slightly frustrated that a strategy call for him did not see him given the opportunity to fight at the end. Roberto Ferrari, Michael Polishek, Brandon Hawkin, Eric Goldner, Marcel Tai, and then Jack Cedric, the rest of your top 10 in the category, with behind them Matthias Pensela, David Baker, Brad Newman, and then Felipe Barreto and Rui Queiroz all scored and classified on your lead lap. DNFs for the likes of Miguel Freitas, for Anton Vedrev, as well as what was a ultimately insane race here, and the World Center of Racing came to a close with the fastest lap set by the zebra of Thomas Leboudelet as well. It's that time when we can dive down into victory lane, and well, we were wondering what the emotions were like for Will Chadwick. We're joined by the winner in the GT4 class now. Will, talk to us about what's going through your mind, a 2-time winner of the iRacing Roar.
It's not bad, is it? No, it was a really good race. I got massively panicked at the first stop because I thought I'd messed my strategy completely. But it turns out that just going full fuel and sending it is the best way, I guess. But yeah, no, really over the moon.
Talk to me about the call, because I thought it was the wrong one. I'll eat the humble pie. When you go back and watch the broadcast, you're not going to be very happy with me. But yeah, how stressed were you coming out in traffic and with plenty of work to do?
The way that I looked at it was, I've just got to send it as hard as I can. I thought there's no way anyone's took full fuel, and I looked at my tyre wear after coming out the box, and I only had about 15% wear on the rear left, so I thought I don't need to take tyres. That's why I assume people decided to fuel a bit less so they could take tyres for free in the second stop. But yeah, just gave it my best. Had some really good traffic, especially when catching Sven. And yeah, no, I just held a really good consistent pace, which clearly paid off.
How's the start off 2024? I mean, when you won in 2022, it's crazy to think how much has changed since then, Will. But of course, I think you're full of optimism heading off into a new calendar year, especially as the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain's starting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. Tomorrow is a big my third season in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain, and yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I sat here as a driver without a team. So I'm not doing Daytona. I don't have anyone to do that with. So I just kind of focus on that PEC GB series, focus on the events that I know that are coming up for myself, and just keep trying to improve every day, I guess.
Well, Will, always great to watch you out there in the sim. Enjoy this one, and I guess we won't see you at Daytona in a week's time. We'll see you tomorrow, though, to kick off that Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain campaign.
You will do. Thank you very much for the broadcast and the commentary, and I must say thank you to the people in the Discord with me, which were Luke Crane, Josh Thompson, Max Verstappen, and Sebastian Job, who were my sort of pit crew, I suppose you could say, trying to help me through the race.
It's not a bad pit crew. Congratulations. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
And I hope that he takes plenty of heart into tomorrow's opener in that Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain as well. Paul Smith will be part of the commentary team along with David Addison for that. Let's go though, Paul, and I think it's only fitting to go and look at some of those finishes, because boy did we miss some of those barn burners.
Yeah, as we were calling those finishes across the line, this was a second place in GT4 and thousands between them at the end. Absolutely great stuff. And even further down in GT4 as well, Max Esterson there with Steen Ledger and also Gabriel Streitmiller Matter. Absolutely brilliant stuff to see right at the end here, and this is what you can get at Daytona. The draft, the slipstream, it's BMW versus Mercedes, and well, it was just at the line, literally at the line, the BMW that took it.
And that's again why, like we were saying through the course of the race, you can never blink at Daytona. There's always more that meets the eye in terms of the story. And like we've been saying as well, 7 days from today, we return to this venue, but with the eyes of the world watching. The biggest sim race of the year, more than 15,000 drivers expected. And Paul, while I think the both of us maybe don't look at our memories of the Daytona 24 and iRacing with fondness in terms of competition, I think the thing that we do recognize is every year we head to Daytona and we enjoy some of the best racing of the entire year.
We certainly do that, and it always gives us a tremendous race. Does the iRacing Daytona 24 powered by VCO, and it's always one of the biggest grids as well in terms of the amount of splits, the amount of teams competing in it. So we had just over 1,500 taking part in this one. Well, I mean, you can times that by a power of 10 as to what we're expecting next week.
Oh man, and 24 hours of uninterrupted coverage as well, powered by VCO, the first of 4 VCO Grand Slams this year across a stacked special event calendar. Here's another look at that before we say goodbye. I think the one that we didn't talk about that I wanted to maybe touch on a bit more, Martinsville MX500, a concept started in the virtual world, heading off into reality, but being very much enshrined in the special event calendar for this year. That will be a lot of fun. But Paul, so much excitement left to come, and we've been joined, of course, by the Indy 500 this past week too.
Oh, I mean, it's great to see the 500 back as well. Yes, it's TBD with the date, but my goodness, what an event. It had to come back, didn't it? And we're delighted to have it back here in iRacing.
It's going to be a lot of fun with the journey to come, but for now, it's time to bid you farewell and to look forward to the biggest sim race of the year. 7 days from now, we'll be back at the World Centre of Racing on RaceSpot TV and on the iRacing Esports Network to get underway with the iRacing Daytona 24, and we hope that you'll join us for all of it. For the team behind the scenes at RaceSpot TV, for Paul Smith joining myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us for this iRacing Roar Before. It's been a lot of fun, and if it's an indication of what's to come, 2024 is going to be great. We'll see you next time in these iRacing special events. Congratulations to Nathan Moore, to Will Chadwick, and to Aaron Vasquez, the winners of the iRacing Roar Before.